Okay, do you want to go ahead and just kick things off and let everyone join in since we're live? All right, great. Well, thanks everyone for joining. We appreciate you being here today. Just to quickly introduce myself, my name is Kendra Flugerman. I am Chief Growth Officer at iSales Dynamics, and we're so happy to have you all today. We have a great little workshop to start your day today. Just to run through the agenda very quickly, we're going to kick off with the CRO of Veride, Sharmila Wijakumar, Sam for short. She is also the CEO of iSales Dynamics, as well as her nonprofit that she founded, Rahab's Daughters. So we'll start with Sam, then we will cut over to Larry Kaufman, and I will introduce him, and he will talk about, social selling through networks, through LinkedIn. And we will also have a panel after Larry's presentation on women in sales. And then we will finish up with Jenna Rogers from Career Stability on creating urgency. So it'll be a great lineup today. I'm super excited, and thanks so much for joining. With that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Sam and let her start. So I will share here to get things going.
Thank you, Kendra. And so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sam Wijakumar, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about resilience in sales and how I started out on the streets and ended up in the C-suite. And so for those of you who don't know much about my story, I, at 16, was a victim of human trafficking. And I can honestly tell you that it changed and shaped my life. The situation, though, wasn't something that I would have envisioned ever happening to me. And I think most people wouldn't envision it happening to any member of their family, because I'm that girl who was really just someone who appreciated being at home, right? So I think Kendra's probably popped up some slides here in a moment, but when she gets them up, you'll get to see a picture of me in my favorite thing to do as a kid, which was to make clothes for my dolls and to essentially allow myself to play all day with my dolls and make their clothes. And, well into my early teens, I was consistently doing that. And you would think, oh, how cute. The thing is that kids are not particularly cute about these things. And so I grew up in Australia during my elementary school years. And in Australia, there was this bug, and the bug was called the witchetty grub. You can imagine, with a name like Wijakuma, that this little witchetty grub was, the very first thing that they called me. So also, this grub was something that the Aboriginal natives often ate. And so you can see where this amount of teasing would be going, right? And so I was teased mercilessly. And, all through school, I was a kid who just preferred the company of myself. And so, Kendra, next slide, please. You'll find that I essentially spent all of my school years in a book. Books were my favorite thing in the world, and with my nose in them all the time. I really got bullied a lot. girls can be really cruel, much crueler than you expect. And it cut to the core. And I became suicidal. So at one point, I actually attempted suicide, but I couldn't even do that right, or at least that's how I thought of it at the time. And I drank every pill I could find, from, boxes of Valium to every single pill I could find. I drank it all at once. But I didn't know it at the time. My body just couldn't process pills like that. So I started just throwing them up in giant pill balls. And it was pretty crazy. I actually survived the suicide attempt, but didn't know how to handle anything at this point. I felt like such a failure, and I hadn't built up the skill sets needed to survive yet. And so I thought, you know what, this is crazy. I'm just going to leave. So I ran away from home. And after that, I became a typical statistic, because I ended up being groomed for human trafficking and locked in a room, and became a victim, after which I had zero self-esteem. So how did I get from being that girl to being this girl? Next slide, please, Kendra. See, today I have a wonderful, loving family. I have amazing friends. I have a full support network, and I've organized my mental health to be something that I can count on, not something that takes itself into control, right? And part of that is really building out how you respond to things. So let's talk a little bit about how I got from that girl to that girl. Today, bitterness and pain are just a point of our lives, right? We've all had some terrible pain in our lives, and that pain can fuel your purpose, or it can fuel your failure. It's up to you. How you want to handle your pain and how you want to deal with your bitterness is what will initially stop you from creating the resilience you need to survive, particularly in the world of sales. See, if you allow those pieces of pain to form and take hold, they create bitterness. And unfortunately, that stops you from finding your purpose. You got to take that pain and turn it into drive. And I don't know if your pain was losing a grandparent when you were young, or if it was an addiction, or if it was a parent with an addiction or an illness, but we've all had pain, right? And pain and loss can shape our lives if we allow it to, and it can shape it positively or negatively. What I would advocate for is how you can turn your pain into drive. The very first part of that is making sure that you're working on the coping skills. You got to look forward, not behind. In fact, if any of you have seen the movie The Blind Side, which is, by the way, one of my favorite movies, when the young man is asked, how he was able to keep himself on a positive path, he basically said, he would close his eyes, put his blinders on, and just keep moving forward. And I think it's super important that we don't mistake that for ignoring the past or burying it or repressing it, but instead that we choose to acknowledge what was behind us, but help to look at how it can propel us forward. I think some other really important pieces are know your purpose. What's your why? Do you know your why? Do you know what you want to achieve, what those goals are? Because knowing your purpose and then making sure that you know your personal value proposition are absolutely critical. And if you don't know what your personal value prop is, then email me, samw@veriday.com. I will be happy to talk to you about your personal value proposition, because it's so very important. And so many of us don't know what our PVP is, but it's a necessary piece of the puzzle, because learning how to build resilience, particularly in sales, is a skill that's very rarely taught. And we need to teach it more, because at the end of the day, that resilience is going to get you through. And gratitude actually plays a really important role in helping salespeople to remain grounded, because at the end of the day, there's lots of things to be thankful for. We just have to look for them every day. And in addition to gratitude, making sure that you can keep things in perspective and take some time to manage your stress, whether that's through meditation, yoga, reading your Bible, whatever works for you. It's got to be something that you practice on a daily basis, because if you don't reground yourself, it's very easy to lose perspective. And this is why there are techniques that can really just combat the very negative sales environment that we often live in. You and I both know that rejection is a part of our day. We know that that can make us frustrated. It can stop us from having proper perspective. And if that builds up enough, your performance as a salesperson will suffer. And if you're a sales leader, your performance as a leader will also suffer, and there will also be repercussions to your team. And that can really be the downfall here. So what we're going to talk about today is what are some things that will help you to build and retain resilience to achieve better performance. So first of all, environment, guys, right? Every day, salespeople have to persevere through an abundance of negative triggers. And let's be fair, some of those negative triggers are experiences and thoughts that we're telling ourselves or reliving ourselves, right? This is why it's so important to understand your environment and review your metrics and really make sure that you are looking at what's important here. So let's talk about a, outbound salesperson. So you're an account manager, an account executive, and let's say you've got 100 new prospects that you want to work on. You're calling, you're emailing, and let's say you're getting somewhere between a 15 and 30% response to that list. So in this case, that's going to be somewhere between 15 and 30 prospects, right? So let's assume that maybe 30 to 50% of those are qualified. So it's going to give you maybe 8 or 10 appointments, right? Now, of those, let's say you're a really good salesperson, so maybe another 30% turn into customers. So now you've won maybe 3 to 5 customers from your initial 100 list of prospects. Let's be fair, that's a lot of work, right? Just to strike that little bit of gold. And there was a lot that happened in between to make this more challenging. So how do we stay optimistic through all of this? I mean, when I wake up and I see the wonderful clouds and in the sky and the sun shining, it's easier for me to have a good day, because I really do like a good cloud. But let's be fair. How many days are not sunny and full of pretty clouds and a blue sky? Lots, right? I mean, I live in the Niagara Falls area, so I can honestly tell you that there are certainly so far more rainy, cloudy days than there are sunny, bright ones. And for most companies, some of the conversion metrics that we talked about on the last slide are typically only achieved through mature sales processes with a very good product market fit. And we'll talk about those things in separate sessions. But today, that outbound strategy is critical for companies to be able to increase their market share, right? And we've got to make sure that our salespeople, that's each and every one of you, are in a position to want to be persistent, to manage their negative experiences, and to make sure that this doesn't impact their mental health in a negative way. At the end of the day, rejection like buyers ghosting you, deals falling through, time spent with non-responsive buyers, these can all be triggers that are really emotionally charged for salespeople, and they can actually help them to lose perspective, opening the door to self-doubt, depression, and anxiety. And these are all the things that we don't want, right, in our lives as salespeople, and we don't want them in our teams. But the only way to work through this is to build resilience to combat these forces and to take a more optimistic outlook for positive outcomes. So first and foremost, we got to think about those positive outcomes, and we've got to be there for our teams. So how can we help our teams build resilience? So first and foremost, we've got to be conscious of the environments that we live in as salespeople and that our teams are living in as salespeople. What are they experiencing in any moment? And I think that John Yates, who wrote the book, The Mind Illuminated, did a really good job of explaining how consciousness can really work during a sales call, right? So during a sales call, you're perceiving the tone of your buyer's voice, your internal thoughts and feelings about them. And then let's say that something goes wrong. Maybe your colleague spills coffee right next to you and everybody jumps up and you're now trying to clean the coffee. But you've got to be efficient here because you've got to be able to clean the coffee and understand what your client's talking about, right? So part of this is your attention and where it's focused. And part of this is your peripheral awareness and where it's focused. Because at this point, we've got to be scanning the environment for what's important, but also understanding the internal and external experiences that are happening here. So these are kind of split pieces that happen in every sales call that we need to be thinking about. And we've got to alternate between the multiple objects that are happening around us. And, some people like to call this multitasking. Others, consider it peripheral awareness. It's whatever you look at it like. But at the end of the day, it's the focus between the objects that's alternating. And this is a very important skill, particularly with resilience, because you've got to be able to understand that your consciousness has limits and that your body can get, and mind too, will get tired if you work them out too much in this sort of awareness versus attention situation, because the energy that you're using is coming from the same place. So making sure that you can focus your attention is going to be part of this, and training yourself to be able to do, sort of that focus, attention, and environment piece together is important. And so I know you're all going to say to me, well, how am I supposed to practice that? I can't, pre-practice somebody spilling coffee if I know it's coming. No, you definitely can't practice, unforeseen accidents. But what you can practice is paying attention to two things at once. Are you able to scan your environment and do something else at the same time? So here are some things that I do to practice this skill. I often do two things at once. So I may watch TV while creating this presentation, for example. That was absolutely true. I might have a conversation while working on email. I might, and a lot of people say, oh, well, you have to be present only in one place and do one thing. And if that is your life and you can orchestrate it that way, more power to you. I don't disagree. However, that's not the world that I live in. The world that I live in is that customers and the room that I'm presenting to are often doing multiple things at once. And I've got to be able to focus my attention and scan that room and still be able to tell what's happening and not go off topic in my presentation or in the discussion that we're having, and make sure that I'm still going to get across my salient points. And part of this is just building your ability to have attention and awareness so that they're constantly working together. And this way, you will continue to get the most accurate information so you can make decisions on how you need to change things. So for example, during a heated argument, when you and your customer are maybe debating pricing, which is something that I see all the time, what else is going on in the room? And what else is going on with you internally and with them internally and externally to make sure that you're able to meet your customer where they are and continue to have positive thoughts about this experience without allowing the negativity to get ahead of you, right? Research on 12,000 journal entries actually found that there's a very negative effect when there's a setback at work. And oftentimes, happiness was more than twice as strong in a positive situation than during times of setbacks. And so when we're having those discussions and things are getting heated, like a negative pricing discussion, we've got to remember all the times that we've won the discussion about pricing and try to focus on those to give us the energy we need to get through this particular discussion. And that's a very important piece of the puzzle, because it's very, very easy to forget the good times when you're in the middle of the bad times. At the end of the day, becoming rejection proof is a very, very important skill, because rejection is something that we see every day in sales. There's no way to get out of it. But there are actually ways that you can look at to build your resilience against rejection. My favorite way that I recommend to folks is to read the book Rejection Proof by Jia Jiang, and I highly recommend this book, and then take the 100-day challenge. I've had my team take the 100-day challenge more than once. It's 100 days of asking something that you really just don't think you're going to get and seeing if you get rejected or not. So, walking up to Krispy Kreme donuts and asking them if you can have a free donut, or, so many other types of things, right? And you can practice this personally and professionally for 100 days, one thing a day. You will find that if you practice the skill of getting rejected regularly, you will become more accustomed to the feeling of rejection and more able to overcome it. It is definitely not a fun thing to do, but it is a very useful thing to do, because if you continuously get rejected and don't allow it to affect you in a negative way, you will learn a few things. Number one, you don't always get rejected. If you run this challenge for 100 days, I promise you there will be days that your thing that you thought you were going to get rejected for, you actually don't get rejected. It actually works out for you. I did get a free Krispy Kreme donut. Secondly, you'll find that once you normalize rejection more, you're going to not put as many negative connotations on it. And in doing so, your feelings about it will not be as strong, allowing you to move past the rejection and onward to overcoming the objections, which is a very important piece of the puzzle. So what I want to really leave you guys with today is 8 steps on how to build resilience in sales. And these are the things I want you guys to think about as the key takeaways from today, because negative experiences within sales, they're going to happen. And all salespeople will have internal biases that make different experiences stick with them. And when this happens, you lose perspective. And this is going to impact both your performance and your mental health. These steps will help you to stop this from happening. So let's start with thinking about a gratitude journal. I really believe that you can either keep a journal of gratitude or take the time to write a thank you card every day. I personally prefer to write a thank you card every day. So every day I either send an email or call someone or write a thank you card out to express my gratitude for something. And for me, this has helped me to remember that, one, I don't do this alone. There are lots of people around me. And by being grateful for all that they do, I can remember the positive experiences that happen to me on a daily basis. And this helps me to improve how I perceive my environment, which then in turn helps me have a more positive mood. It's also really important and for me, step 2 is harnessing the power of EQ. So understanding other people's emotions and feelings and realizing that their feelings and emotions they're not caused by you. You are not necessarily the reason for something. And a lot of salespeople, relive their different sales experiences and wonder, was that me? Folks, we're responsible for our reactions to other people's actions, not their actions. So thinking about how you can look at your emotional intelligence, your emotional quotient, whatever you want to call it, and understand where that fits in the grand scheme of things is going to go a long way for you in helping you to keep yourself focused on the positive and not the negative. The other part is managing your stress triggers. Do you know what your stress triggers are? For me, this is point number 3. Managing your stress triggers means 1, knowing what they are. 2, having a plan in place for how to cope with those stress triggers. Those of you who've worked for me before in a work or in a volunteer capacity will know that when I get stressed, I tend to start questioning things because I need more information in order to better understand and readjust. Now, a lot of people say that this makes them feel like I'm a drill sergeant. In fact, at times I've had the nickname Napoleon. And I embrace my nickname with joy because it definitely reminds me that I'm not managing my stress triggers if they're calling me Napoleon. But secondly, that it's a way, in a nice way, for my friends, family, employees to remind me that I'm not managing my stress triggers, because calling me Napoleon automatically reminds me that I am now either barking out orders or I am, behaving like a drill sergeant, neither of which is a positive response to stress triggers. So it helps me to remember that, hey, you're not managing this, and now you need to think about how to do that. And I have my own coping strategies for that. But being able to know, recognize, and then manage those will take you far in building your resilience. The fourth thing that I think are really important here are to build your personal board of directors. For those of you who've been in mentorship groups with me, you know very well that I am all about personal boards of directors. These are the people in your life that you absolutely know and can count on, who are going to tell you the truth no matter what, even if you don't really want to hear it, and even if it's not really going to sound great. You need different ones for different situations, but you've got to figure out who those folks are. And folks, this is not just your mother, though your parents definitely have a place on the board. You've got to have a wide, set of board of directors, professional, personal, financial, health, mental health. Who are these people, and how you build them into your lives is very important. And if you want to learn more about personal boards of directors, give me a call or talk to Kendra. We both feel very passionately that this is an important skill that salespeople need. You got to learn to let go as well. This one's harder for me. When something negative happens, I want to stew on it for a while. I want to play it over and over. I want to have thought through all the different angles and things that I could have done, coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? The thing is that while it is okay to process that negative experience in order for you to get to a positive place about it, dwelling on it for too long can hurt your performance and your mental health. A lot of times I advise my team, go for a run, do some exercise, get out for a walk, take your dog, do something that allows you to think about it, give yourself a time limit that you're going to ponder and relive this, unpack it, and then move on, folks. Got to move on. I recommend debrief calls with your team or the team that was on that particular account when it went awry, so that you can debrief together. Y'all can get some closure and move on, because that closure has to happen, or it's going to hurt your ongoing performance if you hold on to those experiences. And in the world of sales, we're going to have a lot of those negative experiences, and we just can't keep them for long periods of time, or we will sink in the sea of negative experiences. The sixth thing is to engage in a strong network of peers. Folks, I can't tell you how much I appreciate my peers. Sometimes just that 10 minutes in the morning when I can unload whatever might be on my mind, or that 10 minutes in the afternoon when I can talk through something that happened with another peer, makes all the difference in the world, because now I've managed to process it, get some closure, and move on. But in order to do that, I can't do it to my upline. I can't do it to my downline, because I don't want to cause negativity in my workplace. But having a set of peers who've been through these things, who are facing them on their jobs, who hold similar positions to me, means that when I call them up and say, hey, this happened to me, they're able to empathize, maybe provide some solid advice, or sometimes just listen so I can get off my chest. I have come to absolutely appreciate this, and I have them for different facets of my life. So I have peers in sales, I have peers in my nonprofit world, I have peers in the coaching world, I have peers in the speaking world, because the different problems that crop up for me are often different to the typical ones that people have. And so I've got to have people who are living in that sphere, who are feeling those things, to help me work through it, which is really important. I also, think that item number 7 is making sure that you are focusing on the positive each day. So what in that group of peers, you might want to talk about the good things that happen, right? So celebrating the small wins is critical. And I think celebrating the small wins is definitely number 7 on my list, because if you are able to take that win every day, that tiny little small win, whether it was that you achieved your to-do list today, or you organized your calendar, or you got a, political map done, or you had a positive conversation with a customer, got to celebrate those small wins, because they help to increase your happiness, which will help to increase your sales performance. And the last thing I would say is that you've got to build momentum off those small positive experiences, right? To propel you to do some of the harder things that you may not want to do in the day. Spending time practicing a new skill or technique, it's not easy, right? But it is particularly gratifying to see that if you exercise your muscle of resilience and you continue to build it, it will give you the far-reaching strength that you need to move through your sales career into the positions that you really want to have. And I can honestly say that, as someone who once lived on the streets, and I never realized how important resilience was in taking me to the C-suite. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. I hope that you will take the time to build resilience and reprogram your brain, because it naturally wants to perceive the world in a more positive way. And it's up to you to exercise those muscles to do that. Thank you so much. Kendra, back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam. That was great. I think I definitely learned a lot today. And resilience, I think, is something that I continue to work on a daily basis. So it was great. Thank you so much. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce our next speaker. It is Larry Kaufman. We're so glad to have him here today. He is the author of the best-selling book, The NCG Factor, a formula for building life, changing relationships from college to retirement. He's a connector, giver, and rainmaker who lives his life to help others succeed. Larry is the regional managing director for the Midwest region at Jefferson Wells. He has been a globally published speaker and trainer on LinkedIn for the past 15 years. Larry's also an investor and advisor to several local technology companies and supports several national and local charities. He resides in a Chicago suburb with his wife and 2 children. So without any further delay, please help me in welcoming Larry Kaufman. Thank you, Larry. I am going to
Thank you.
make you the host. There we go. Okay, all yours.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kendra. Hopefully you can see my screen right now. We're looking good.
Looks great.
Beautiful. So thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kendra. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. We'll get right into our agenda for today's session, which is really about selling without selling. So I'm going to set some expectations, talk about anticipated results. My favorite topic is me. So I would like to talk about myself a little bit. And I'm going to also do a little snapshot on LinkedIn and also about my book, The NCG Factor. That's networking, connecting, giving. I'm going to define that a little bit, give you guys some homework, and you can chat in some questions along the way. We'll try to get to them at the end. So what's going to happen? What are some results from today? You're going to be more effective in some of your one-to-one networking meetings, maybe with your channel partners, your trusted advisors, within your client and prospect meetings. Those are live and virtual. And while selling without selling, I want you to learn at least 3 new things. I'm going to set the bar really low today. And then I'm going to be your SME, subject matter expert, in building relationships and being a connector. So here's my favorite slide. So it is me, LinkedIn Larry. That's what I have on the Zoom call today. And that was given to me many years ago in Vegas. I was presenting, and the topic was LinkedIn. The woman that introduced me, she knows me. She first introduced me as Scary Larry, which I didn't like that much. And she changed direction. She said, what about LinkedIn, Larry? And that stuck. And I've kept that. It's worked out really well. So I'm the regional managing director for Jefferson Wells for the Midwest region. And I've been out there for 30 plus years in business development and leadership roles. I wrote my book in 19. Actually, next year starts 15 years on the global speaking circuit about LinkedIn. I'm not going to, talk long about these slides. I think it's important to know where I come from, that my parent company is a $22 billion company headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, called Manpower Group. There's a couple reasons why I bring it up today. One is because we provide a lot of data on the employment outlook. So significant surveys we've been doing for decades, really powerful, a lot of thought leadership on what happens with the shortage, when there was a surplus, impact of automation, and so much more. So go to manpowergroup.com, check that out. The other reason I bring it up is because Manpower Group has been putting my son to work for years through the Manpower division. So if you have anyone looking, to get some maybe holiday pay, then you can go to the manpowergroup.com site as well. Check that out. And then I would also tell you my company, the brand Jefferson Wells under Manpower Group, is more like a professional services firm working in, the areas of accounting, finance, tax, business optimization, risk and compliance. We kind of look like an accounting firm, but we're not. And I'm going to move on because today is really about selling without selling, but I like opening with quotes. And so what we do for ourselves dies with us. What we do for others in the world remains and is immortal. And what does that really mean? It's about the other person. I know that's hard when you're in sales. You want to sell your products and services, but I'm more about the other person. And when you make that shift, everything's going to change for you in the right direction. So I have kind of a theme for today, and I'm going to put out the question for you to be thinking about, but I'm going to share how you can be indispensable, but really, are you indispensable? Are you indispensable to your clients? Are you indispensable to your family? So we can think about things like this, personal and professional. So let me bring it to the family side. So I'm indispensable to my family for certain things. My wife of 33 years thought that I was indispensable to fix things. One day she said, Larry, the pilot light on the furnace is out. Can you go downstairs and relight this? Of course, sounds simple. So I did that. I went downstairs, came upstairs, and we're sitting in the kitchen. And my wife said, do you smell smoke? And I said, actually, I do. So opened up the basement door and there was smoke starting to come up the stairs. So fire department, all good, no fire, caught it in time. I thought my wife learned her lesson. Well, the light, the fixture in the kitchen went out. Said, hey, Larry, can you get that going again? I said, of course. So confident I could do that. We were without power for 3 days. So my wife realized she will not ask me to fix things. She soon realized I'm very good at fixing vendor disputes, billing issues, service issues. I get it done. Now let's shift it to the business side. If you actually think about it this way, if your clients thought of you as indispensable for almost anything, which means when they would come to you for things outside of your products, services, and solutions, you strengthen the relationship. They call you for things separate from what you sell, and then you have a deeper rooted relationship. So are you indispensable? I am. I'm not in sales. I run a P&L. I've got a team of 60, but I do build relationships and I do posture myself as indispensable within my company and external. Let me give you some examples. Can I start off with a cool one about Sam? So I was having a meeting with a gentleman who sells promotional products. So he's had this business, moved from New York to Chicago, great guy. And we're talking and I'm getting to understand his business and what his clients look like. So I suggested some potential prospects for him that I would introduce him to, which was great. So he's very pleased to hear that. I said, beyond that, how else can I help you? I said, if it's something kind of out there, it could be strange, it could be normal, just ask me. So, well, here's what I'm looking for. I want to put an end to human trafficking. I said, wow, that's very noble. And he said, well, if you know like a charity foundation, someone doing that, let me know. I did not. A couple of weeks later, I meet this wonderful human being. I meet Sam. And Sam and I were talking, and Sam was a victim of human trafficking and built a charity to put an end to it. She's amazing if you don't know all facets of Sam. I said, Sam, well, I met this gentleman who's got a promotional products business who's looking to also put an end to human trafficking. Would you like to meet him? She said, I'm actually having an event where I could use his services. I put the two together. He helped her out. Sam became a client of this gentleman and he supported her charity. All good, fantastic, great relationship. Am I indispensable to both Sam and that CEO of the promotional products business? Yes. Now, let me take it a step further because I want to roll it more into my world and business. So there's a gentleman I met, a CFO. A lot of you may like CFOs. And so I was talking to the CFO. A lot of us, meet with people, but maybe don't delve deeper into who they are. We get right into business issues, what keeps you up at night. I don't go there. I want to learn about people professionally, but personally first. So I was in public accounting at the time, and I was meeting with this CFO, and we were getting to know each other. And I asked him about his family, and a family member of his was a daughter that he had in Denver who was working in marketing. And as we were talking about it, I said, how's she like that? He said, well, she's looking to move into sales. Most people would hear that and just go, hey, that's great. I wish her good luck. Not me. I said, hey, could I actually connect with your daughter? And he's like, why? I said, well, because I'd like to have some coaching sessions to help her transition from marketing to sales. I spent 4 one-hour sessions with her virtually. I did that because that's who I am. and he knows I'm authentic. It's got to be authentic. Well, he was looking for a new audit firm. We became his external auditor. He left that company. We retained that relationship. He became CFO of another company. He didn't call the audit partner. He called me. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an auditor. He called me because I had developed that authentic relationship. I became indispensable. And actually, this happened 3 times where he made those shifts, called me, never the audit partner, who I still brought in. We both got credit, but I built that relationship. I became indispensable. Let me share another way you can become indispensable, but I want you to think about this because I always tell people, like, Sam, think of me as an indispensable resource, that person you can come to for the things I do at Jefferson Wells, but outside of that, come to me for things that can help you or those that you know. So an executive at my company, very high level executive, called me on my cell. She never does that. Called me on my cell, said, Larry, you're so connected. Can you help my daughter? I said, sure. What do you need? Well, she's a junior and she's looking for an internship in the finance area, right? That's my world. I said, no problem. I can help her out. Can you connect us? Of course. Well, one fact that she left out that she shared at the end of our call was she's a junior in high school. So that poses a bit of a challenge, but I was up for the challenge and I wanted to help out. I actually was able to find her daughter a paid internship with a very large accounting firm because I had built a relationship with people at that firm that were willing to go the extra mile. Got her a paid 4-week internship through 4 areas. Unbelievable experience and resume builder. How powerful is that? So now I'm indispensable internally in my company. One last example. So I met an executive, a CEO, former CEO of a $15 million manufacturing company. I was in a coffee shop here in Illinois. I was with a gentleman that owned an executive recruitment firm. We ran into Mike, who was out of work. I said, Mike, I'd love to meet with you separately, see how I could help you. So we exchanged information. I did a couple weeks later. We had a great meeting. I didn't know any companies hiring CEOs, but I kept him in mind. A little bit after I met with Mike, I met with a gentleman who owned a $100 million company. He had a business issue. And I was listening to the business issue. It sounded like something that Mike could help him out with. So I connected the two. Their first meeting was like 6 hours. They had a fabulous meeting. Now, I put them together because I thought Mike can help with an issue. This CEO of this $100 million company ended up hiring Mike as his president. So he went from 15 million to 100 million, which became 200 million through acquisition and growth. And then they sold, and Mike was out of work. During that time frame, Mike became a client of my current company. Mike has become a client of previous companies. I've done a lot with Mike. Mike was divorced during his tenure. He got a divorce. And I want to share another side of Larry, who's indispensable. Well, one day I had met an HR executive in transition. While Mike was in transition, I thought HR CEO, they could network with each other. The HR executive was widowed. And I told both of them, I think this is going to go beyond business. I just have this intuition, something's there. Took Mike a year to tell me that they had fallen in love. So I am also a relationship connector on the personal front. Do not send me any requests. I'm overloaded. Check out my LinkedIn profile featured section. I've got a podcast I did with a dating expert. We'll talk about that another time. Let me shift gears to living legacy. And the reason I'm sharing all this ties into selling without selling. It's about building relationships, but what do people think of you today? What's your legacy of 2 types? So one, when you're gone from this earth, and the other is while you're here. That's one we want to talk about, because you can make an impact by me being indispensable in the things I do and have done. I'm impacting my legacy, the living legacy, and the one when I'm gone. I don't know if you've ever watched Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David. So Larry David had one of his shows was about Albert Brooks, if you've heard of that movie star comedian. So Albert Brooks wanted to know what his legacy was. He wanted to host his funeral at his house while he was alive. So he went upstairs in a room and was watching on video people he knew to say things about him. How powerful is that to actually hear what people think about you today while you're alive? And so what I like about that is that we can impact our living legacy by doing different things. And so what I want you to think about, while I go through very fast today, I'm going to run through a lot of information, but think about, are you indispensable in your living legacy? What were people thinking about you today? Don't think about when you're gone. Let me roll into LinkedIn and Batman. Now, I don't care what superhero you like, but this may resonate. I'm assuming with sales folks, people that sell, you're on LinkedIn for a while, but some people have told me that, they still don't get it. Hopefully I'll dispel that today, but I'm vengeance on the night. I'm really getting sick of your LinkedIn invites. So I built a network of almost 30,000 first level connections over my tenure being on LinkedIn, which I have a similar following, which is as big as some big companies. And if you have an iPhone or a Droid, I just want to do 2 quick exercises, interactive, where you can invite me to join your network. Don't do it yet. I want to show you how to do it on your phone. So find the LinkedIn app on your phone. And I'm going to walk you through this, how you personalize an invite. When you go to the main website, you should always go to someone's profile to connect. Don't go anywhere else. So if you look at the far left, Reid Hoffman, I have an exchange with Reid Hoffman on LinkedIn because he's the original founder of LinkedIn, billionaire. He flatly declined my invite to connect, but I have a nice communication stream of that rejection that Sam talked about earlier. I want you to invite me to your network. And I'm going to show you how to personalize. So go in the search window, type in my name, Larry, K-A-U-F as in Frank, M-A-N. Find me in Chicago, all caps. Once you find me, if you'll see in that middle part of that image on the far left, you'll see sort of a following message off to the right, 3 dots. Touch it with your finger. And then this middle image, you'll see it says personalized invite. Tap that with your finger and send me just a quick little message. Hey, I'm on your virtual B2B today. Larry, hey, great tie. I don't know if you can tell I got a pocket square, whatever you want to say. Hey, Larry, 30 years in sales and leadership. Wow. I'm actually 58. So you can say, Larry, you don't look a day over 32. Okay, send me a little invite, and I'm going to show you one more quick thing. So some of you may know about the QR code on LinkedIn. I was at a Great Clips, if you have those by where you live, and I was waiting outside, and a gentleman had a code on that said Loyola, University of Chicago, where I went to school. And I said, hey, are you at Loyola still? And he said, no, I graduated, got a job at Deloitte. I said, hey, do you have the LinkedIn app? And we did this. So this is a way to connect with people when you're meeting at an event, people in your company, any type of meeting, or even just going to a party, down the street from your house. It's a great way to interact and connect with people instead of trying to find their profile. You do it through the QR code. So what you would do, go in the search window with your finger and touch in the search window. You should see a little icon to the right of that arrow. If it doesn't come up, go to the My Network on the bottom and then go in that search window again. And then you may have to enable a setting, but the middle image will show scan or my code. It's like going to the movie theater. So they're using that camera to scan your QR code. It's just a cool little thing to do. So one of you will be the code, one's the scanner. When that profile comes up, click connect right then and there. It's cool. It's better than business cards. So hopefully it's something new you didn't know. Let me keep it going. We got a lot of ground to cover. I want to talk about Kevin Bacon. 6 degrees versus the power of 2 degrees. The Kevin Bacon game, the 6 degrees of separation has become a 3-degree game on LinkedIn. First degree is when Kendra and I connected, we're first degree. Second degree are the 29,000 plus connections I have that are second degree to Kendra. If she wants to know any one of those folks, or those of you connect with me today, same thing. I'm the conduit to those 29,000. Third degree, I'd like to say, is kind of like a cold call. So if you build the right foundation network of first level connections, then you have a stronger pathway to the second degree decision makers you want to get to. Now, if you look on this page here, and you look off to the far lower left, that's a Rolodex. Some of you may know about that because I've been out there a long time. This is kind of like the solar powered Salesforce CRM in our day. It's coveted. And what I will tell you is you make connections. I would assume all of you are connecting with your channel partners, trusted advisors. You're connecting with all the decision makers that you're meeting with. And if you're connected to a CFO or a CIO who makes decisions for your services or products, and they're a client and they love you, and they love what your product or service or solution does for them, then you have access to their Rolodex 24/7, 365, which is really powerful when you start to think about it. And a lot of people don't think of it that way. And then there are a lot that do. I'm hoping that you do. I will tell you, LinkedIn has made me such a great connector, giver, and trusted advisor. Quick stats on LinkedIn. LinkedIn wants to be at Meta's numbers, right? Facebook, which is, hovering that, 2.5 billion or more. LinkedIn's about 800 million global members. Average leader, CEO, has 930. The average user has 400. You should be at least at 500, so you get that little 500 plus on your profile. But again, you want to have a good foundation network. With 29,000, I can get to almost anybody. You don't have to have 29,000, but have a good foundation network with the right mix of people and connectors. 40 million people out there are LinkedIn decision makers. A lot of companies, 65% use this as a B2B tool, which I'm assuming all of you do. 5.5 million accountants out there, they make a lot of decisions no matter what you sell, those CFOs. 3 million share content. So if you post anything, like anything, share anything, you're part of the 3 million that do that on the homepage. And there's a lot of companies and growing on LinkedIn. Not going to talk about this long, but I think it's important that thought leadership plays a role in what you do. But if you don't have a great profile to back up when you post something about what you do, now maybe it's thought leadership could be you could share something that you have, like a new solution at your company. You have some new press release, a new offering, or there was a piece on a particular topic someone published at your company that you promote. It doesn't have to be just you. Posting could just be a quote of the day. Could be, hey, I'm looking to add 10 more people to my sales team. Whatever you want to put out there. The reason I'm showing you this is a lot of people ask me, when do you post? What do you put in it? Do you have a video? Do you have a video of a baby, a cute baby or a cute dog? Do you put an image? Do you have hashtags? Do you tag people? And when? When do you post? How often do you post? I thought I knew the answers to that. Now on the left, I posted about my book back in 19. You can see I had, almost 35,000 views, a lot of likes and comments. Now, Greg on the right, some of you may know Greg Solkovich. Greg and I, go back many years, and Greg is in my book. And Greg put out this post, and his posts usually garner 100 or so likes. Look at these stats, 23,000 likes, 1,000 comments, 2.5 million views. I called up Greg immediately. I said, what the heck happened here? If you look at this post, this is all it is. There's no video. He didn't tag anybody, no hashtags, nothing. So I don't know when you post. Should you still tag people? I think you should. Should you put 3 to 5 hashtags that are relevant in there? Yeah, I think you should. I think you should put relevant data points in there, make it look nice. Yeah, is a video great? Yes, but I can't tell you when to post and how often. Let me move it forward about like a one-to-one networking meeting. And this could be with a client, trusted advisor, channel partner. So if I get together with Sam, we talk about family personal stuff. Then we kind of roll into the business side of things. And then maybe in advance, I said, Sam, check out my LinkedIn network. Pick up 5 to 10 people that align with who you'd like to know. And I'd love to introduce you. And Sam's like, you do the same with me. And we come together with our list. Everything's great, but something doesn't move forward. So what doesn't move forward is, how do we connect each other to those people that we would like to meet? So maybe Sam had 10 people she picked out. I can get her to 5. I know really well. How does that become more efficient? Well, have you created your own introduction? So here is your homework for today. Write this down. Create your own introduction in the third person. What do I mean by that? If I have to introduce Sam to somebody that she picked out in my network, says, hey, Larry, I'm going to send you my introduction written like you wrote it about me. Why give creative control for someone else to write an introduction about you? Why not write it for them the way you'd like it to read? And the worst thing that can happen is someone writes their own introduction about you that says, hey, I'd like you to meet Larry. He's a great sales guy. No offense, but CIOs, CEOs, CFOs, they may not want to meet someone who's defined that way, but someone who's defined this way in my intro, they may be interested. The last line is critical. Expect to hear from Larry to coordinate next steps. I'm taking control of that introduction. Powerful, it works, and is used all the time. So all I'll say in this slide is I am a functional speaker and trainer on LinkedIn. What I'm sharing here are all the different ways and pathways that I've gotten to people that I wanted to know when I was in more of a selling capacity or trying to help someone on my team. Like this bank up in the upper right, I was trying to help out someone on my team that couldn't get into this bank in Chicago. And I said, well, wait a minute, who do you need to get to? Well, I need to get to the corporate controller. Send me a link to their profile. Well, that was a second-degree connection to me. A lot of shared connections. We knew people in common. I picked out one person. It was a fractional CFO that I've known for years. I said, hey, Matt, how do you know this corporate controller, Jeff, at this bank? He said, well, we went to college together. We were roommates. To this day, we're still friends and we travel together with our spouses and families. Could you introduce me, through an email? He said, no. So what are you talking about? I said, I'm going to call him. He will meet with you. How powerful is that? So what I will tell you on this slide, the key about this is when you're meeting with people and you want to get introduced to potential targets and you have great relationships, don't give them a broad range of, I like $50 million companies to $1 billion, and I like CFOs and CIOs. If you could name people that you want to know or companies you want to get into, a lot easier to break open those doors. Be specific. All I'll tell you about LinkedIn is just keep connecting with people every day, because you may be remiss in that and forget. You want to broaden your network, keep doing it. LinkedIn is not just for you. It can benefit you and your relationships. Again, remember what I said, it's about the other person. I've helped many people get jobs. I've helped people get internships, even juniors in high school. Don't call me if you know a junior in high school. I can't do it. I'm too busy. Networking introductions. And I'll say on the last one, LinkedIn is a great dispute resolution tool. Now, can you do this for someone in your network or for yourself? If you're having trouble with your cable, getting furniture delivered, or other things that you need done. I had an airline issue. LinkedIn has all the decision makers on there, and you could send messages. It is powerful. On this slide, all I want to say is you can be an open networker. You can be selective. It's okay to be selective. You don't have to have 29,000. A lot of data on LinkedIn. I'm going to try to walk you through a couple LinkedIn snapshots to take you through some things that you should know on LinkedIn. Let me talk about profile very quickly. Background image. It's real good. And the reason I talk about LinkedIn and your profile, this is your credibility builder. This is where people look to find you before a meeting. And it's important to have something strong there. So good background, branded image. Now, if you looked on the app, you may have noticed I have a 30-second video on the app. When you edit your profile, you can create a video. So that's a nice way to brand yourself. My name's in all caps. And the reason I put my name in all caps is because, yeah, I have a big ego, but when people look for my expertise, I definitely want to be found. So the other thing next to my name is a little icon. And if you were to click on that, it's a recording. So if you have a difficult name, like, Sam's name, record your name. That's through the app again, through the profile editing section. Get 10 seconds of recording time. So Larry Kaufman is maybe 2 seconds. So you get 8 more to play around. Listen to mine. Headline, not just the title. Tell people who you are. And I have to tell you, some of these things may resonate. Let's say you were an Ironman or triathlete, or you love tennis and you put that up there, or you're a second-degree black belt in a martial art, and someone else you're meeting with, an executive, notices that in your headline. It's a connection point. So get creative. You can look at my profile for more ideas, but hopefully that's kind of helpful for you. On the headline, also important to be creative, like I said. So I thought this was a good example. If you don't know that last name, Gaffigan, yes, he's related to the famous Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, movie star. And Mitch was in an audience where I presented, and I actually told what a big fan I was of his brother. And actually, Mitch got me backstage to see his brother perform in Chicago. And then he called me up shortly after and said, I'm really, stuck. I need something catchy in my headline. That was mine, the funny Gaffigan. It's a conversation piece. Kind of cool. Now you see this little bell off to the right? First degree connections that have that bell and their thought leaders. If you actually click on that, now you'll be kind of following them directly, and you'll get their posts and see what they're putting out there, which is pretty good. So if you have like some prospects you're going after, something they post may be important, and it may cause you or prompt you to reach back out to them. Free thing to do on LinkedIn. The things I'm talking about are all free membership options. If you look at the bottom of the slide here, creator mode is free. You can flip that on. And if you see in the top box, my headline section, so you can include talks, topics you talk about or have expertise in. It will also display the number of followers you have. So if you have a light network, maybe you don't want to do that, but if you have a good following, good network, maybe not a bad thing to do. And it changes some priority when you post out there. It captures a little more attention, and other great things will happen with creator mode. Not a lot of time to talk about, but wanted to share that with you. It's free. My about section, some of you may not have one. That is your credibility builder as well. And this is where you could share things you would never share on a resume. So look at my interesting facts. I don't know how many of you read my profile before coming here today, but put in things there I would never put in a resume, pieces and in common. And it could be philanthropic interest. It could be, anything that you want to share. A lot of different things you could put into your about section that describe things about you outside of work and inside of work. So get creative, but also share the great things you do within your business. Searching on LinkedIn. Some people think that you just type something in the search window, that's it. That's a part of it, but there's so much more. So in that search window, once you put your cursor in the search window, hit enter, you can click on people and all filters, and then you could start doing a deeper search. So off to the right here, you could do it by geography. You could do it by company. You could do it by industry. You could do it by all the people that went to your university. You could do it by title. So all CFOs that went to your university in Chicago or in Buffalo, New York. A lot of cool things you could do. Don't just think it's the search window only. I know some of you have Sales Navigator. That's really where you want to get to, because it has deeper searches. If you're just trying to get into a company like Abbott, when you go in that search window and you get to the Abbott company page, this is what it looks like. So where I have that it says 5 other connections. So that person 5, those are my direct first level connections at Abbott. But if I clicked off on the 220,000, I could search Abbott to get into that company for myself or for others. And so then I could do a similar filtered search where you see off to the right. So I can click on all filters and I could type in title. I want to know who has a CFO title at Abbott. And then I could search that and start to find out who's second degree to me and who do I share in common to get to those people. Here's Sam. So Sam, if I want to network with Sam, like I was alluding to earlier, or if you want to network with a channel partner, trusted advisor, or a client that loves you, if you look at their profile and you see I highlighted 500 plus, if it's in blue and you can click on it, then Sam has opened up her network. Some people that you're maybe close with and their privacy settings have closed that off. Some don't even realize they did it. You could ask that person, hey, I was going to look at your network, see who you know, but it's closed off. You could ask them to change that setting even temporarily, and they could flip it back. But if I click on the 500 plus, it allows me to do a filtered search similar to what I showed you already. I'm moving away from LinkedIn, and then I'm going to get to questions at the end. So let me run through the NCG factor and kick off with a quote. This is my own quote. If you lead with yourself, you will leave with yourself. I've managed salespeople. I've been in sales. It's so easy to dive right in and talk all about yourself and not let the client or prospect talk, or to go right into business. Don't lead with yourself. Get to know that person personally first. Delve a little bit deeper. You'd be surprised what you'll learn. Take things from their profile, shared connections, talk about it. It's unbelievable what you can extract. I just met with someone, and in their profile, they were on the Glee Club in college. It wasn't really applicable to anything, but I just said something during our conversation. I said, hey, so being on the Glee Club formerly, did that help you in your job today? And he laughed. He said, how did I found that in your LinkedIn profile by your college section? I said, no one's ever asked me that before. So it started up a little conversation and showed that I did my research. So I kind of redefined networking in my book. And, kind of before NCG, it was, you go to events and you just try to grab as many business cards as you can and give out as many as you can. And I really think it's been like a social exchange and not really targeted, relationship driven. And when I wrote the book, I thought, let me redefine networking, because I felt it was different. Networking to me was more about that relationship. If I was at an event with Kendra and Sam, and I saw someone at that event that they should know, I would make that connection at that event. Or, Sam, tell me more about yourself personally. And she may have said something like, hey, you know what? You should know a friend of mine. We tend not to do that. And if you approach where you're really authentic and trying to get to know people and cultivate a relationship, your networking takes on a different look and feel. Now, today we're at a virtual event, but I would tell you every one-to-one meeting, every virtual type event that you go to, my recommendation is for you to have a goal and purpose. I know it sounds easy and simple. Many don't. But what do you want to get out of that meeting? You're meeting with that CFO. You want them to be a client. You're meeting with a channel partner that you've been very good to. They haven't been very good to you. What do you want to get out of that meeting? So have a goal and purpose. It makes more sense for you and the other person. I'll make this story very quick. I was presenting at a bank, and it was on the topic of LinkedIn, and there were a lot of the bank's clients were invited. That's who was there at the bank. And a CEO came up to me after, asked me a quick question. And, I answered his question. All I know is I came back later that day. I had a message on LinkedIn from that CEO. And he has a promotional products business. And he heard me say, I work for a $22 billion company. So he said in his message, hey, Larry, I heard you speak today at the bank. Could you introduce me to the head of procurement at your company. I have a promotional products business. Someone in my charity board is in the same business. And I had gotten him into my company, a long time back. And he's been great, a great mutual relationship. And was I going to give this CEO who attended my presentation an introduction? No. So I was starting to type a message and I got lost. And what had happened was I sent it. So there wasn't a full message. He called me because I make myself accessible. He called me the next day. I answered the phone. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I like taking these calls. They're good learning experiences. And he told me who he was and said, I sent this message, didn't make sense. And I said, oh, you know what I was going to tell you? I have a board member on my charity that does what you do, and we have a relationship. And I've introduced him to my company. I could never introduce you, but had you reached out to me and said, Larry, great talk on LinkedIn, love to get to know you and see how I could help you. Would you be open to getting together? I said, that would have been another way to get to me. Doesn't mean I would have made the introduction to my company, but maybe I could have helped you in other ways. I said, I'll tell you what, if you buy my book and read it so you understand me, call me back and tell me that you get it now. I'll take you out for a meal and see how I can help you. So I figured that was sort of my, okay, see you later. He'll never call me again. A few weeks later, he called me and said, Larry, I loved your book. I get it. I screwed up. I was all about me, not about you. I wasn't building a relationship. I wanted to sell. And some of you are thinking now I've done that. And so we did get together. I treated him to a meal and I made introductions because the people he wanted to know were different from what my board member does. Powerful. Let me just share quickly about inner and outer circles. You need these to grow your business and to help those prospects, those clients, those trusted advisors becoming indispensable. So your inner circle are those closest to you. I'm probably like outer circle today, but maybe you're going, hey, I'd like to meet you and get to know you and bring you into my inner circle. Well, inner circle, you could start to build that with people in your company, right? Or family, friends. Those, then the external would be like me. And then I'd also fall in that next bucket, which if you connect with connectors, so people that know great people that are willing to make introductions, that makes you more indispensable, more powerful to cultivate relationships and help others. Now, I think this sentence is overused. How can I help you? Sometimes I don't have to ask it. With the case of Sam that I shared with you, with that promotional products CEO, I did ask later, but I knew how to help him up front. That CFO where I helped his daughter, I knew how to help up front. So I didn't need to say, how can I help you? But it's a good question to ask if you can't, get anything out of some of the questions you've asked. But, you can also help by being a mentor. Like I was helping that CFO's daughter, it's kind of being a mentor. She can be formal, informal. I mentor and coach a lot of people informally. You could support special projects. So I'd say even at your company, it's good to be known and build your internal brand and get out there and start to cultivate internal relationships. Philanthropic causes. So being a volunteer, participating in a charity is huge. And that has really blossomed my network and I feel good about it. How about this one? Hard to say no. So let me throw this one out to you. Can you do me a favor? So now, if I ask Sam, do me a favor, because we know each other really well, I know she would say yes. Some people would say, hey, I need to think about it. And those that say no, you don't want in your network. So I want to share a little bit of a story. I'm going to make it very quick. It's about my son and my dog, because it's a touch into hockey and it's a touch into football. And it's two losing teams in Chicago, the Bears and the Hawks. But my son has gone through years of being bullied. He's 22 now, but had a really rough life and went to a pretty dark place. And I needed a favor. And the reason I bring this up is sometimes you're going to need a favor, or your clients are, your prospects, and you have to have solid relationships to do this. So I reached out to a friend of mine, Desmond Clark. May or may not know him, but played for the Bears for a long time and retired. And I met him at that time and just like this guy with instant likability. We cultivated a great relationship. And he was someone that I reached out for this favor. And I told him all about my son. And actually, when I called him up, said, "Hey, Des, it's Larry. Can you do me a favor?" His immediate response was, "Of course, what do you need?" So I told him everything about my son, more than I can share today. And I said, he needs to get connected to the Hawks. He built this Instagram account with thousands of followers, makes montage videos, and they've noticed. But this could bring him out of his dark place. He said, "I'm on it. I'm going to do it for you." A couple of days later, I said, "Larry, you guys are going to the draft at the United Center in Chicago, and you're going to have a meet and greet with a player from the Hawks from the past or the present, right?" My son, being a teenager at the time, of course, would like to meet, a current player. But I level set, it was great. We got there to the United Center. We're seated. We get a text from Ashley at the Hawks. She's like, "Come on down for your meet and greet." We get down there. She walks us into this private area, see a photographer, and then these two gentlemen in suits, one's carrying a box of all this hockey stuff. Well, I have to tell you, it's Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. These are my son's heroes. These guys were in the prime of their career with the Hawks at that time. My son's not emotional, but I look over and he's losing it. And he spends 15 minutes with these guys. It was incredible. And, my son hugged me after. He was grateful, an experience he'll never forget. And what Desmond did was unbelievable. And I will always, always be there for Desmond. I make connections all the time. We have a great relationship, but he knows I'm forever indispensable to him. He did something that I'll never forget. You cannot do favors, ask for favors of anyone without building these deep-rooted relationships. And I have many Des relationships. Sometimes I will need those favors, and I call them out for my clients, our prospects, my staff, for others, my family. Hopefully that resonates well with you. So if you guys go out to, a party, holiday gathering, and you're talking with someone, they're like, "Hey, my kid is in transition, just graduated from college, can't find a job, or is looking for an internship." Pre-NCG, what we discussed today, you'd be like, "Hey, sorry to hear that. I hope that they find something. I think the market's gonna open up." Post NCG today, you're gonna be like, "Hey, get me their resume. Can I talk with your child? I hope I'm changing the way you think." Also, I put a goal in my book. Now you can have a goal to make $1 million in sales or 10 million. How about a goal on how to help other people? It could be daily, weekly, monthly. In my book, so I want to help someone in transition every single week. I crush that goal every week. Here's your homework. Self-reflect. I know you've been doing it today, I hope. Listen more, right? Don't show up and throw up. Don't lead with yourself. You leave with yourself. Start to think about being more giving and making connections. Build and define your inner and outer circles. Set that goal, how to help others. Embrace the NCG factor. Create your own introduction in third person. And what I'd like you to do as part of your homework is start to research maybe some of your top 3 to 5 clients who they know that you'd like to know that could be a prospective client. Ask for intros. Definitely intros from those that you've been really good to that maybe they haven't been so good. This is a way that maybe they could give back. I'm not saying you always want to get it back, but it's okay to ask. Pay it forward. Share NCG with other people. So I think I've allowed myself 5 minutes. Kendra, is that correct? Everybody left. Kendra's gone.
Sorry, Larry. I was trying to find the mute button. Yes, you were correct.
Okay, I thought I was by myself because I can't see anything. So I'm gonna stop the share, and I want to see if there's any questions that came up, and then also if you guys could chat any takeaways, anything that you walked away with today, something new, something that kind of resonated, inspired you, or Jenna's like, "Wow, I'm totally going to do that." I would love to hear from you. You could chat it, or because we're a small group, unmute yourself and talk, come on camera. I don't care. Stay off camera.
The one thing I'll say is I've seen this done in practice, but I've never heard it communicated the way that you talked about it in terms of writing that third person email, in terms of, it's always hard to uncover how to get to know a person without seeming like too invasive, or just getting uncomfortable with it and going straight to business. So I appreciated how you were able to speak to that.
Thank you very much, Jenna. I appreciate that. Anyone else or any questions, Kendra, that were in the chat?
Hey, Larry, a lot of people are on the live stream, I think like 140 some, and they can't actually chat to you. So we might want to tell them to just ping you directly or reach out on a DM in LinkedIn or whatever.
Go on LinkedIn or, flood my email box, right? Go for it. Larry.Kaufman@jeffersonwells.com. You're going, that is crazy. But hey, I'm a giver. I'll do it. I'll get to those emails.
Awesome. Thank you, Larry. Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I think, Jenna had mentioned it as well, so just a little history. I've had the amazing opportunity to listen to Larry already. So, I've every time that I do sit down with you, I learn something new. There's so much that you cover, and really taking it all in. And just kind of focusing on that, writing your own intro, like that's so useful, right? Like just having that on hand. Everyone wants to help, right? That having that network as you talk about, but having that, making it easier for them too, right? And having that ready and in your own voice, right? That like how you want to be introduced. I think that was something I picked up again that really, is a great thing to have, have that intro on hand, have multiple intros based on who you're networking with, right? And the opportunity there. So
it's awesome. And I've had, C-suite, our CFO, $22 billion company CFO, he knows CFOs I want to know. I give him my introduction. He doesn't have the time to think about what to say about me, and it wouldn't be right. I make it easy. He just takes it. When you got clients that want to refer someone to you, I often find they stagnate. And if you go, hey, you know what? I'll send you my introduction so you don't have to think about what to say about me. Could you email both of us? And they're like, oh yeah. And it flies. It's awesome. So I know I'm at 9:30 Central. So I wanted to make sure I stay on time to allow other great speakers like Jenna to get out there and anyone else that is on. But I appreciate the time today. Sam, Kendra, Jenna, Margaret, Jack, Chris, all you folks that were on here on Zoom and then also on YouTube, right? So fantastic.
yes.
I look forward to all those emails flooding my inbox.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Larry. That was great. That was wonderful. So
Thanks, guys.
very much appreciate you being here today.
Thank you all. Have an awesome day.
You too. Thank you. Okay. And I want to just throw up this slide very quickly, as we're kind of moving on to our next discussion. But thank you all again for being here today. We are recording, we are live on YouTube, so there is plenty of information that we have to share after the event. So, please come out, like our page, visit our site, like us on Facebook, all of those great things. We'd love to have you following us. We are working to publish our newsletter starting next month. So please like our page. We'll send that out for everyone to subscribe. So yes, thank you again for being here. But with in the spirit of moving along, I wanted to kind of introduce the next group of folks. We're moving into our sales panel. So we have a wonderful lineup here for today to discuss. But it will, consist of Sam Wichkumar, who was our keynote speaker. For those of you that maybe joined a little late and missed her intro, Sam is a sales leader with over 20 years experience in B2B sales. She is currently the CRO at Veriday, and the CEO of her nonprofit organization, Rehab's Daughters, as well as iSales Dynamics. So great to have her here today. We also have myself on the panel. I introduced myself at the beginning, but I am a sales professional, over 12 years experience in B2B sales, enterprise software. So I have been in this space for a while, and currently the Chief Growth Officer at iSales Dynamics. So I'm very happy to be here and have you all here today. And then I also have Jenna Rogers. So Jenna Rogers is what she defines as a corpreneur. She is the VP of Growth at Sales Assembly and the founder of Career Civility, a communications consulting firm. She's on a mission to redefine communication in the workplace, and she specializes in the training and development of sales processes, programs, and teams. She's passionate about the people behind the bottom line, and you can find her providing tactical communication advice, selling sales training in the B2B tech world, and helping people communicate more effectively in the workplace. So thank you, Jenna, for being here. I also have Dimple on. Dimple Kotita is a software engineering graduate from McMaster University. Since then, she's worked in the technology space for the last 20 years and started as a software developer at major Canadian banks such as Royal Bank and Scotiabank. Her versatility and engineering degree has served her well as she transitioned into oil and gas in Northern Alberta to work for Suncor Energy as a control systems engineer. Since 2016, she has transitioned into solution engineering roles on the sales team while working in software companies specializing in digital transformation. She joined Salesforce in 2020 in the enterprise financial services space, working alongside strategic enterprise financial clients to provide innovative solutions to meet their evolving needs. And then moderating today for us is the wonderful Margaret Debska. Margaret is the iSales Chief Customer Officer and Illinois Chapter Director at Rehab's Daughters. She has over 8 years experience in the nonprofit world, fundraising and working with clients to ensure success. So thank you all for being here today. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Margaret lead our conversation.
Thank you, Kendra. Welcome everyone, and thank you everyone to joining us for this panel. So kick off this panel first, I would like to ask our panelists, could you please tell us how you decided to take up a career in sales? Maybe we can start with Sam.
Okay, well, mine was a fairly non-straight path, right? So as many of you know, a survivor of human trafficking, I was taught how to sell myself first, and I didn't really have any other particularly good skill sets, so that sort of parlayed into selling other things. And I was lucky enough to get my first sales job, which ended up being another human trafficking operation, but selling encyclopedias door to door. I highly do not recommend this as a sales tactic, but it's sort of how I started my sales career. And then unfortunately, that didn't go so well, but I then realized that actually I could sell things. And I ended up getting a job at ADP, selling payroll software and converting people from paper payroll. And they did such an amazing job of training me. And, you know, I will forever be thankful to their awesome sales training program, because it then sort of, you know, changed the trajectory of things. And I realized that I actually could do sales in something that I liked to sell, which ended up being software and has served me well for the last 20 plus years. So definitely wasn't the conventional way, but you know, it turned out for the best.
Thank you, Sam. How about you, Dimple?
Oh, it's funny. I started out in engineering and had a really technical sort of first 10 to 12 years. Honestly, I didn't even know that you could be in sales for the first part of my career. I had no idea. My dad was an engineer. We had engineers all over our family. So no one really highlighted that this was actually a line of work. And it's interesting because I feel like what sales gave me was a chance to be creative, to leverage my ability to communicate, which is uncanny. It's something that I've been told I'm really great at from time to time. And I love hearing about real problems from different companies. Like I find that's really fascinating to learn. And it lets me use just skills that I have, right? That I don't necessarily need to work on all the time. Like, this is the new tech, you better learn it, right? Like you can use, learn to read a room, your empathy skills, your communication skills, right? So this is kind of how I found my way. LifeRay is a company that gave me my start. Truly grateful for the opportunity because I learned so much there, working with Sam and Kendra both. And from there I got the opportunity at Salesforce. So this is kind of how I found my way. And, I'm so glad to see younger women starting out in sales. And I just think to myself, wow, I wish I had discovered this earlier. So I'm really thankful that they got the opportunity.
That's great. Thank you, Dimple. How about you, Jenna?
Well, I also love hearing these stories. It was probably I don't know if it's unconventional, but I definitely stumbled upon sales. I don't know if anyone really, well, I think a, very small percentage is very, set on sales as their career. And I had a goal. I'm originally from Arizona. I had a goal to move to Chicago and I had an opportunity and I took it. I don't even think I knew what the job actually was. It ended up being sales. And similar to what Sam had mentioned, I found that I really like tech sales and software sales. So here I am, but stumbled upon it because I wanted to get to Chicago and that was my ticket to move to the big city. And here I am.
Thank you, Jenna. Kendra, how did you start your career in sales?
Yeah, thank you. So, unconventional way again, as Jenna, kind of pointed out, I don't know, how many people are like, okay, I'm going to be in sales when I grow up. It's kind of evolves, right? And same with me. So, I actually out of college, I got a computer science degree. So I was going to be a developer and I was going to sit behind my computer all day and not talk to anyone and just code. And so I had it all figured out. And that's what I did when I first got into the real world. My first job was at a manufacturing company being a developer. So it's a Java developer. And actually my boss who had hired me at that company, he really took a liking to this software, this open source software that we were using called LifeRay, Dimple mentioned. So, he had left that company and went on to kind of do some independent work there for that software, and then joined their community and eventually joined the LifeRay and was their sales leader. And so he came to me, and he always said like, oh, you'll work for me again someday. And I'm like, okay, sure. And, but so he came to me and he's like, hey, I have this new opportunity. Why don't you come and do sales? And I'm like, no, like that's not me. Like, I am not a salesperson. And it's not like, so I had a very stereotypical view of sales at that point in my life. It was, those super competitive, people who are, just trying to win, right? Like that's kind of what I had in my mind. And I don't match that, I was very introverted at the time, still am to an extent, but anyway, so I'm like, oh, no, and so he talked to me after a while and he's like, well, what's the worst to happen? You go back to programming. And I'm like, okay, we'll give it a shot. And here I am, over 12 years later. It's been great. It's been such an opportunity, as Dimple mentioned, like being able to solve people's problems. Like that's one of the things, like, I think with developers, like they like to problem solve a lot, right? So I'm doing that in another aspect and solving those customer problems. So that's what really drives me in sales. It's not the competition. So I realized over time that there's many personalities in sales, right? And we're all driven in different ways. And mine's really kind of that customer focused and helping people. I have, you take the personality test, I'm a helper. So that's, kind of how my sales, is motivated. But
thank you, Kendra. That's a great story.
So not to interrupt you, but I see a sixth member of our panel up here on the screen, Carmen. Danella, who is literally just starting out her career in sales as an intern. And I just thought maybe you want to hear from her real quick before we move on with the rest of the panel.
Sure. Can
Carmen, you
hear
want to
us?
unmute?
Yes, what should I say?
Tell us about how you're enjoying your internship and starting your off learning about sales.
I really like it actually. I really like it because it's something new and it is challenging, which is something that I really like because it constantly pushes me to do better. And I also like hearing like constant feedback. That's something that I'm not used to at all, and I love it. So that also helps me a lot. I don't know. I kind of like it. I really like it.
Carmen's balancing her newfound sales career with starting college in January. So she's also, I think, enjoying having the flexibility that sales gives to be able to balance the different things that you can do. So thanks, Carmen.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. You're doing such a great job, and we see you growing every day. So,
Thank you so much.
my next question is, DE&I is hot topic today, and rightfully so. Do you feel as a woman in tech sales that there are different challenges you face versus your male counterparts? And how have you worked to overcome these challenges you face? Let's start with Kendra now.
Yeah, I can kick it off. So absolutely. I think, at some level, whether intentional or unintentional, right? We've, as a woman, have faced a challenge. So, I think, kind of looking back at, my career and kind of where I started, it was very much male dominated, at the time. And I think in a large part in a lot of organizations it still is, but it's changing over time. But yeah, when I first started, very, very male dominated team. And so I faced a challenge with, kind of being heard, I think. I was also much younger than the other people on my team. So in addition to being, male dominated, I was also much younger than the others. And so I think I also, kind of got put into that, kind of child type role, right? Like, oh, we'll take care of you and help you, kind of role. So it was a bit of a challenge to overcome, kind of pulling myself out of that kind of place, where people would put me at that point. So I really had to, kind of focus on, putting my ideas out there and, showing, I was very, show what I can do, and I'm put in the time and the effort, and, that gets you so far. But one of the big things that actually Sam had taught me was to take up space. And she still tells me to this day, like it's something that, that I continually have to work on, the same as my resilience, all these other things. But you have to take up space. You are important. When you're sitting in that meeting, don't just fall into the background, like be present, be there and contribute. And people will hear you. So.
Thank you, Kendra. How about you, Gina?
Okay, I'm off mute. I always have to check before I start talking. I know this is such a loaded question in terms of the background, the experience, experiences such as, when sales is a lot of meeting, right? And you're meeting largely with men. And especially when you're starting in your sales career younger, you're meeting with older men who are decision makers, and the relationship is unique. It's challenging to navigate as well. So that's always something that is in the back of your mind as a female sales professional, is to make sure that you are presenting as professional, as the expert. You're not being taken advantage of in any capacity. So that's always at the forefront of your mind, in my experience. Something as big as that, even recently, I've been advocating for more inclusive language throughout our company messaging and our website and our pricing, because historically it's been a very male-dominated industry. And now that women are getting into leadership ranks and they are decision makers, we now need to make sure that we are being inclusive with the language that we're using and the messaging that we're using. We can no longer just message someone and be like, hey man, can I get an introduction from you, right? So big things such as like understanding or navigating the interpersonal relationship with the people that you are working with, selling to, the accounts that you're managing, all the way down to the messaging and the language and the communication that you're using. So you always have to be on in this role and in this position. And as someone who's advocating for, diversity and inclusion in the workplace, there's a lot of work to be done, but it's something that we naturally do. And to Kendra's point, as long as we can keep taking up space and keep using our voices, hopefully, slowly we'll be able to penetrate some change here.
I'm sure we will. Thank you for your story. How about you, Dimple?
Yeah, this is a discussion I love to have as well, right? Because I started in an engineering program where I was one of like 6 women in the program. So right off the bat, it has been like, I'm used to being one of a few, right? And that followed me into my software career as well. And I always found that it was hard to engage in work conversations with my peers because guys talk differently with other guys, right? Like, and as soon as a woman walks into the group, the conversation changes and you're no longer privy to that, whatever that authentic conversation was, you're not a part of that, right? And it's really hard, to be part of these backroom types of conversations where decisions are made in terms of advancements and things like that. So it took a while, and I don't even know if I figured it out, to be honest. And I think the thing that it really forced me to do was to always know my stuff inside and out, right? So it always took extra work to really show how much of an impact you can actually make. And I've always found that to be very challenging because you have to be perfect every time. I think the other challenge that I found is trying to stay neutral, right? So if there's an opinion or thought that you may have that's outside the fringes rather than agreeing, that's hard to express, right? Because you're always worried about what are they going to think about me for sharing this type of thought. So I feel like these are things that I continue to work on. But I gotta say, working at Salesforce is the first time that I was on a team of primarily women from all diverse backgrounds and ages. And it's been refreshing to work with other women and to learn from them. But I also understand, Kendra, the age thing, right? I'm into my 40s now, and I still get perceived as somebody out of school, don't know your stuff, right? Like, and you always have to deal with that first impression, which after a while gets really exhausting trying to prove yourself. So I don't know. We work on it every day.
Thank you, Dimple. Sam?
I mean, guys, it's a consistent struggle, right? Just last week, right before Thanksgiving, I was in the office and I have, some different things going on personally with some illness of a family member. And my boss literally said, you have such a male sort of style about how you think about these things. And I was, in agreement and disagreement at the same time, right? Because yes, and is the answer to that. I have adapted my communication styles and some of the ways that I might problem solve to fit into a much more male-dominated environment. But then at the same time, I get cranky if I feel like I'm losing, that the feminist or the feminism part of me that feels that it's really important for us to be our authentic selves as well, right? And it's a really difficult balance because unfortunately, especially in tech sales, women make up less than a third of the total population of salespeople. So even within your peer groups, there's not a whole lot of options, right? And that makes everything harder because interestingly, we're also still paid 7 cents less on the dollar than our male counterparts doing the same jobs, right? In tech sales. And that, is so frustrating to me that this is still the case. But it does mean that we need to do more of these discussions and invite more folks like Carmen along to hear our stories as they're starting out in this, because while it isn't easy, it's totally worth it, right? I mean, the thing that I can honestly say about my career is that I appreciate that tech sales has given me a lifestyle that I enjoy, and that it's given me a place that I can excel in doing what I do. And that has not been without its fights. And I consistently continue to bring more women in. And I think that that is one of the things that all of us can do, because it is really hard to be, the only woman in the room sometimes, right? And it's hard at all levels, but when we're both internally within your internal teams and then externally on customer site, when you're constantly faced with that, I just think that it's important to have each other, right? I think that for me, having, Kendra and Margaret, and, I've watched all of your careers for the last at least 10 years for most of you. And it's been fantastic to have that, right? And to see that support system build up, and to know that, these folks are available on speed dial. And I think that that really changes the dynamic from a D&I perspective. And while that isn't within my current company, at Veride, we are trying to build it in other places. And I think it's important that if you don't have it internally, you have it externally, right? But it is important to have those peer relationships.
Thank you, Sam. One of the largest trends we've seen recently in B2B sales is the shift in the customer buying journey. More and more prospects are doing independent research for their buying decision rather than engaging with the companies and working with their sales reps to discover products or serve capabilities. How has this shift in the buying journey affected your pipeline, and how do you approach engagement with the prospect today? Let's start with Jenna.
Okay. On one hand, I think it's made my job a little easier, because to Larry's presentation, it is more so based on how you can help them. And I know everyone says it's relationship based, but if you shift the sale to product focused, or if you shift the sale from product focused to support focused and how you can help them, they already know they like your product. And so for you to be able to sell the value prop in order to help and support them, you're cutting out a lot of the extra fluff. And to Kendra's point earlier, you're not having to do that cliche sales process where you're beating out everyone, because they're already an informed buyer. So it's up to you to be able to foster that relationship, to show your help and support right off the bat. On the other hand, it's trimmed down my pipeline, which has made my job harder because they've already evaluated who they want to evaluate. And if you're not in that conversation, it's a lot harder for you to get into the conversation and to get your product or to get your organization or your service even at the table. So it's an and. Again, on one hand, it's easier because you don't have to worry about the fluff. You can really just go right to a value proposition and creating that business case. On the other hand, you don't necessarily have a seat at the table because they already have invited the prospects that they are evaluating. So
Yeah. And sorry, Margaret, I just wanted to jump in, kind of off of Jenna's comments. But I agree with the same. And really, that shift, from the buying journey, where they're doing so much upfront research. They like Jenna said, they already have an idea of who they're going to consider, right? So, with all of this, as you mentioned, our pipeline is thinning. So we're reaching out more, right? We're prospecting, we're trying to bring in, some more business. Well, then you also have the customers who have done all their upfront research and they already counted you out before you even had a seat at the table. And that's a difficulty, that I face, a lot. And so how, you come to them, oh, we'd be a great fit. And you'd be a great fit for everything they're doing, but they're like, well, we already have, we're already past this phase. We can't go back, and so there is that challenge of trying to figure out how to get in front of, these customers in the right way, when they're, and that falls into marketing and, kind of working closely with the marketing team. So we can, talk about that forever as well. But yeah, so that's one of the big kind of challenges that I've seen with this shift. But to Jenna's point, also, we have an opportunity, right? We're not just throwing out our pitch, right? We're not doing this mundane pitch every day, every minute, as we talk to people. We're really doing it strategically. And I love that. And to Carmen's point, like she said, I'm always learning something new, right? And even, 12 years into it, 20 years into it, wherever you are, you're always learning something new, right? So you're engaging with that customer. One of the things that I really focus on, and you focused on it before, but really, really like taking, kind of the time to go through a deep discovery with that customer, right? And really understanding what they're doing, what's valuable to them, right? And not just the company, but to the person running it as well. What is their goal? Is it to alleviate time for their team? Like what is that? Really just drilling down and asking all the questions you can to really figure that out and find that value. And then taking that, and building what you offer on top of it and how you're going to provide that value. I think that's the fun part, right? And where you get to be, a trusted advisor, more of a consultative sale, like really, kind of engaging with them at that level and building that relationship. It's so much better than just, saying your spiel and then moving on to the next, so yeah, that's the great part about how this has evolved over time.
Thank you, Kendra. Dimple?
Yeah, so looking at it from, I guess, the SE's perspective here, I don't personally own my own pipeline, but I support my AE's pipelines. And, I guess the question I would ask is, yes, they've done all this research, but is it correct, right? Like, does it align with what they actually need? So to Kendra's point, right, around doing discovery, if we have the opportunity to go back and really understand what the problem is, what they're trying to solve, like whatever we can get to help them see that what we offer could potentially be, beneficial to them. So that I think is probably the way that I approach a lot of our sales these days, because I support an enterprise as well. That's sort of a pre and post type of aspect to it, right? And I guess at the same time, just lost my train of thought. What was I going to say? Just approaching things, I guess, with curiosity more than anything, and really trying to make recommendations that are going to help them ultimately, right? Like not looking at what's going to benefit us, but really thinking about what's going to benefit them. So just some of the things that I find.
And just to jump in again, sorry, I keep jumping in here, but just to go back to what Dimple said, her and I worked together years ago, and having that, just what she said, being able to understand what they need, maybe they've done their research, but they're not figuring out, kind of where those lines cross and everything. Having that SE, that sales engineer that can sit back and find that, and then leverage that, as they're building out solutions, with your customers, that just makes for a great sales engineer. And why I love working with Dimple so much. She was just so great at, kind of finding that, that underlying, you don't know what you need yet, kind of thing, and not in a, in a offensive way, but really, kind of just molding it, molding that solution to where they just walk it to themselves. And that's just, I think that's a great skill that you have, and that the SEs bring, to the conversation. And it's just, it makes for a great opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say that, a lot of times, even though they're doing their research ahead of time and they've spent so much time feeling like they know what they want as a buyer, I often find that they don't know what they don't know, right? Like a lot of the time, customers don't know what they don't know. They don't know what the latest technology is and what it could do. They don't know that they are feeling this pain until somebody points it out, right? I mean, think about how you maybe, have a minor ache, backache, neck ache, whatever. And it's not until you do something that irritates that part of you, right, that you're like, oh crap, my back again, or in my case, oh crap, my finger again, right? And it's until you do something that sort of just twists it the exact wrong way or whatever, you're like, oh man, that hurt. But it doesn't hurt enough. The pain isn't enough that until somebody, points it out to you, that you realize, oh, actually, that is a bigger pain. And actually, I could get more efficiency out of this, or I could, create less pain in this area that would, give me a solution that I didn't even know was an added bonus to what the core thing I was looking for was, right? And I think it's those nuances that are really important to get across when people are on their buying journey and they haven't, and they think that they know, but, sometimes just trying to get them to take a step back. And a lot of that, the best way I find is just through questioning, right? Like if you can have lunch or have a coffee and have a conversation that isn't specifically sales motivated, but instead is just about that discovery of their issues and their pain, then the rest can come together. Because what I find is that, people get budgets approved for projects, right? Okay, I have a project, I need a new intranet, or I have a project, I need to do sales enablement, and it's budgeted. But then what does that actually mean, right? Like, okay, what am I actually trying to achieve in my sales enablement, or in my intranet, or in my customer portal, whatever it happens to be? Oftentimes they're like going through the motions of defining the problems and that kind of thing. But those of us in sales, we see hundreds and thousands of the same thing happen, right? We see hundreds and thousands of sales enablement programs. We see hundreds and thousands of, intranets put in, or customer portals, or whatever it is that you make or sell, right? CRMs, whatever. And having that broader perspective, I think, is the key to helping people understand that they don't know what they don't know. Right. And so when they come and they feel like they've researched everything, a lot of times just asking a few questions helps them to realize that they actually haven't. And, you have to be careful, because you don't want to feel like a know-it-all smart ass, right? That's just aggravating the customer. But at the same and I think a lot of that just has to really do with you actually caring about their end result, right? Because I think if we go into it caring that they get the best thing possible, then we're naturally perceived differently. And that will give you a different seat at the table. And, I've told customers, I'm not the best thing for you. I'm sorry, I'm just not. You need X, Y, or Z instead, right? And that's okay. Having the lunch or the coffee or the whatever, and then being able to say, I know you did your research and I'm not the best thing for you, but you maybe want to look at this instead, or you maybe want to look at that, or maybe the answer is, you know what, I appreciate where you are in the cycle, but I think I can add some value because of this, this, and this. Can you give me a shot? And, I've found that works in personal sales cycles, like interviewing cycles, when people are like, oh, we've already made our short list, and you're like, well, yeah, but I should really be on that short list. So can we, move that forward, all the way to, oh, I've already made my short list for whatever it is. It comes down to me to you being able to differentiate the value and the knowledge that you have, right? And we can't all be knowledgeable about everything. So the fake it till you make it doesn't work, right? Everyone's going to tell you the fake it till you make it. This is not a thing, guys. You are not going to gain credibility on the fake it till you make it path. If you genuinely don't know anything about whatever industry this is or whatever, it's okay to say, let me bring in an expert, one of my colleagues, one of my, acquaintances, whatever. But, just trying to BS your way through it is definitely not the way to change that. I've already done my research and I know what I'm doing conversation, because all you're going to do is look remarkably ill-prepared, right? So, but I would definitely say that while it has changed the way that we approach the buyer journey, I think good salespeople have found that it actually helps them to differentiate themselves in the ways that, Jenna and Dimple and Kendra have all been talking about.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. So my another question is, with the rise of account-based marketing, it is critical for sales and marketing teams to work together to hunt prospects. Sales and marketing teams have historically struggled with communication gaps. So are you experiencing this struggle today, or has your organization evolved to align sales and marketing? Can you give us some example of how you better align it with marketing to build your pipeline? Kendra?
Sure. Yeah. I just, I've had, I think I know Sam, Dimple, we've all experienced, the disconnect between sales and marketing, right? And it's so frustrating. And it's kind of like, you're almost like, what's obvious that you should work together. But then just in real life, and I think with like maybe the historical structure of organizations, there's a gap there. And I've definitely experienced it over my tenure. It's you're having these conversations with your customers, and then the new year kicks off and your CMO gets up and says, hey, we have this great new brand and messaging. And then, as a salesperson, you're looking at it and you're saying, that's not at all the conversation I'm having. And how in the world am I going to switch to that conversation and still, meet these customers, bring these customers in? Like, it's just, you're just like, oh, it's like this wall just smacks you in the face. And so it's never a good feeling. So, here at iSales, we're really trying to bridge those gaps between marketing and sales, and really, having regular meetings. At my previous company, I was at Sitecore. They had a field marketing team, so it was a dedicated team to the individual sales teams. And that person would meet with them on a regular basis. And that was very helpful. Although, it was more territory driven marketing that person was responsible for. But, it was helpful, right? To be able to create that consistent messaging with marketing, at least in the territory region. The global was still, there's still some kind of disconnect there, but really, focusing on bringing sales and marketing together when you have, your strategy sessions, when you have your meetings on a regular basis, connecting and understanding, what they're doing, what their campaigns they're running, all of that. And really having that continuous feedback loop is important. So as salespeople, we should be reporting back to marketing, what we're hearing, what conversations we're having, what's working, what's not working. And I think that's one of the really big disconnects that we have, is that feedback loop. As salespeople, it's a crazy world we live in, right? We're busy constantly. And to sit there and go, okay, well, let me go call, the marketing team and tell them about this conversation I just had. No, we're moving on to the next one because, they're waiting on us. It's very difficult, but it's equally important to provide that feedback to marketing. They don't know what they don't know, right? They're not the ones having the conversations. They're the one pushing the messaging out. So it's our responsibility to go back and provide that, back to the marketing team and make sure that they know, kind of what's working. So that's my.
Someone who leads sales and marketing. And I can say that one of the most difficult parts is getting marketing to understand what sales does and sales to understand what marketing does. There's a consistency in the disconnect because I see sales get frustrated with the lack of production of leads or the quality of leads or all the normal things that every salesperson gets annoyed about with every marketing department the world around, right? Like, this is not special to any one company. This is special to every company I've ever worked at in sales or marketing, right? The challenge, I think, is that there isn't a clarity. Sometimes I want to second the marketing team into the sales team for a day and have them go out in the field and actually feel what that feels like, right? And vice versa, take salespeople out of the field for the day and stick them in marketing and be like, brand this, or, do this, right? Or generate a lead. It's not a magic click your fingers, it's suddenly there, right? Marketing starts 12 months ahead or more sometimes, depending on a sales cycle, right? And it's thinking about the future 12 months out or 10 months out or whatever. And it's trying to anticipate the needs of people while balancing that with the immediate urgency that some might have for your product or service. So it's a balance of like keeping things, in the what I like to call the cloud, right? Where you're going to pull deals out of. But then having enough of it up there that things are sort of falling down at the appropriate time, while also thinking about, okay, 12 months from now, will this still be the top item on the CMO's mind or the CEO's mind or my, buyer persona's mind, right? And it's a big balancing task to think strategically and tactically at the same time, and to split a marketing budget strategically and tactically at the same time. Whereas on the sales side, we care only about the tactical, right? We want what's in front of us now. How fast can we go? How much can we close? And we only want to know about the tactical. But if we ran a company only on the tactical, it would fail, right? And we can't run. And this is the part that I think sales has to balance with marketing. And I swear, I wish I could get every sales leader to agree to second their staff for a week a year into each other's, places, right? Like, sales has to go spend a week in marketing and marketing has to go spend a week in the field, because I really think it would change everybody's perspective on this, because you get perspective you never had before, right? When you just walk a mile in someone else's shoes. And I honestly feel like it's the only way to really bridge that gap together, because, marketing does more than make pretty presentations and write blogs, right? But there's this perception that is what they do. And that is certainly a part of what most marketing departments do, but there's so much more to it and so much nuance to it that it is actually quite hard to wrap around a lot of people's, visions, especially salespeople who have to be tactical. That's their job, right? Their job is to get to the next sale. And that's so, just my take on it. But Jen, I see you nodding. What's your take on it?
I love the recommendation of switching jobs for a week. And that's because this is the closest I've been. I'm at a startup now, so there's 14 of us, and this is the closest that I've ever been tied to marketing versus my previous role. And to what Kendra said, is they were off doing one thing and they deliver the decks and the content and the collateral for us to then present to our clients. And I was, you're trying to figure out your talk track and you're like, okay, how can I it looks pretty, but how can I make sure that this resonates with them? So we're working on it at the organization that I'm at. And I was actually in a networking group probably a month ago. And one of the recommendations was to stand up a bi-monthly or monthly, depending on your bandwidth, meeting, not only with sales marketing, but then also with your account management or your customer success team as well. So that way you're hearing from what the market and your prospects need, want, and are saying, but then you're also getting marketing's 12-month plan and you're hearing what your current clients are saying. So that way you can solve for all three. And going back to our last question in terms of, prospects doing the research before they even have a conversation with sales, marketing needs to be hyper aware of that because that's their first touch of attribution. I know that attribution is a hot topic when it comes to marketing and sales, but it's very important to be relevant and to make sure that you're speaking the prospect's language, because a lot of times marketing comes up with great messaging and it looks pretty, but it doesn't resonate with what your current clients or your prospects are saying. So in order to remedy that, if anyone has a better solution, we are starting with standing meetings to open up a line of dialogue and to have this conversation. There's a software out there, let us know, but it's a work in progress.
Yeah, and just sorry to jump in, just to, what Jenna said, you have to have that consistent messaging, right? If marketing's saying one thing and then you're having a different conversation with your prospects, it's not going to resonate. They're going to be confused. They're going to leave. I actually just read the other day and I shared it with everyone that, Marketo did some research and 67% of the leads, when sales and marketing is aligned, 67% of the leads are more likely to become clients, like the actual customers. So that consistency, it's just kind of a point there to say, how important that consistency is. It's not, if marketing's performing and sales is performing, then we're good. They have to be aligned. Like it matters.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Simple thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few. I feel like you ladies touched on most of it, right? I think the only thought that I'll add here is that I almost feel like it might depend on the size of the organization, at least in my experience, right? At a smaller company, I find the relationship between sales and marketing might have more of an impact, perhaps, or even the type of businesses that you support. So now I've kind of gone to the other side of the spectrum here, working for a company that's 70,000 people, now supporting the enterprise space. And I almost feel like I deal very little with marketing anymore, or even the messaging that's coming out from marketing. From time to time, I'll go back to our site or I'll look at some of our material to understand, like, what are we actually selling? Like, what are those statements that we're actually making? But very little of that actually touches what I do in the day-to-day anymore. For me, it's more about product management. So it's just more about learning what the product does and what it can do. But you guys made some really great points.
Thank you. So I do have one more question, and this is probably my favorite one. So one of the skills of great sales rep is the ability to know good lead from bad lead. Too often our reps spends way too much time on lead with hope they will be able to bring it on, only to be disappointed after all the time they invested. So how do you qualify out of the lead to ensure you are spending your time on the ones that have potential to close?
I mean, it's my favorite topic, man. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start it off. You have to have a system, right? There has to be a qualification system. I'm a big fan of Banton Pact, right? So budget, authority, need, and timeline. And then, sort of political and people in authority with obviously the competitive risks and the technical evaluation pieces. And that works for me because I'm in tech sales, right? So those 8 qualification pieces are but whether it's a Millihyman or whether it's Medic or whether it's spin selling or whatever your particular methodology to sales is, you have to have one and you have to use it. And it needs to be woven into your CRM. It needs to be a part of how you're, looking at your pipelines and part of your pipeline discussion calls. And you've got to be hearing as you're, quizzing your reps and whatever about, what's happening in their lives. You've got to be able to pick out the band and the pact and make it, or whatever your system is, and make it match the projections, or you're going to have the worst forecast ever. I've worked in companies where forecasting was a joke, right? Like forecasting was so bad that they would forecast millions of dollars for the month and close like $500,000, and you'd be like, because there was no system, right? And it's very easy for salespeople to be like, oh my God, yet another system, right? Oh my God, I don't want to learn spin selling, or I don't want to learn Millihyman, and I don't care about blue sheets and pink sheets or whatever it is, right? Like there's so many of them out there. But I do say to every, sales leader, like, pick a methodology and stick with it and make sure that everyone understands it, because it is the only way to lead qualify. And it is the only way to pipeline qualify, right? Through the stages. And without it, you're going to have a very unpredictable pipeline. And, as many of you know, I'm really only about predictive prospecting and predictive pipelining and operational marketing, right? It all comes together. That operational marketing part is also key to the qualification process, because the lead doesn't start when sales gets it as an SQL. The lead starts way, way back when it came in the top of the funnel, right? And how did it get from the top to the middle to the bottom? When it was spit out the bottom as an SQL, then what did marketing do its part to get to at least a band, right? Do we have budget, authority, need, and timeline? And then it gets spit out. And sometimes, sometimes my reps will take 2 of those 4, but you've got to know what you're evaluating against, right? And I think a lot of people take a lead and then they pray, right? And I'm all about prayer. I am all about that being one of the many strategies we use to close a sale. But hope is not a strategy, right? Hope is something that you should have for all of your deals, but should not be the strategy by which you get to close them. You've got to have a system. So yeah, there's my 2 cents from my soapbox that's, I absolutely care deeply about.
You just said something, Sam, that my previous company was like a motto. Hope is not a strategy. Like it's, yeah. I agree. Like you have your method, you stick with it. But one of the things that I found so valuable is those pipeline calls where you have to talk about your deal and what happened and, what qualification factors are there. It's really that reality check, because, going back to our previous conversation, our pipelines are thin. So we don't want to let go of anything we have, right? So we will make in our heads, everything checks the boxes enough, right? And so we got this, it meets it. We should spend time on it to hopefully bring it in. But really, you can get caught up in that. So having that, those pipeline calls, it's proven to be such a reality check for me. I didn't necessarily have that so much in the beginning of my career, but did more so, later. And that helped me to kind of qualify my leads for myself, right? Because you can hear things and you can not hear things,
Happy years, right, Kendra? Happy years.
Yes,
that's what I like to call it.
And Sam's other favorite motto is to fail fast, so if it's not working out, just we're done here. So, so those are always things that sit in the back of my head, as I'm saying, oh yeah, but they want to, this is going to be the next project down the pipe, so they're going to want to, do X, Y, Z. And it's just, that stuff gets pushed, so it doesn't solidly check those boxes, of our process, of our qualification. So having someone call that out in a review that's what helps me a lot. So.
Dimple, any thoughts on this?
This is not one that I actually deal with a lot, but probably something that I have a relationship with my AE and we have to talk about a lot, right? Where they'd come to us with something and say, we need a demo for this right now. And this is where the SE goes, why? Right? So I think, we really need to understand what's the urgency? Why are we trying to get this out there so quickly? Is there really a need, right? I didn't ask those questions, and sometimes I feel like I should do a better job of asking these questions as well, right? Because I'm not motivated by the same thing my AE is, and it still requires my time to support them. So I really have to, as an SE, I think it's important to really have a voice and don't be afraid to ask the right questions, right? If you're not sure about something, just ask. I should be giving myself this advice today.
True, though. It's great advice.
That's it. Yes.
Jenna?
And I'll close with, to ask the question why. If you're going through your process and you're understanding BANT, budget, authority, need, timeline, also ask the question, why are you trying to solve for this right now? Because if they're giving you a timeline and it's like, oh, January, February, every single email that I've gotten in my inbox this month, it's like, we'll circle back in January, February. I know that's just them pushing me out. So if you were to double down and say, why are you trying to solve for it in January, February? It gives you more information. If you're on the line with them, why are you trying to solve for this right now? Do you have the budgets to solve for this right now? So asking those why questions will help you qualify. And you'll probably have to close out some ops in your pipeline. But when you're opening new opportunities in your pipeline, and you've asked those questions, you know that you can commit those and they're solid and you don't have to rely on hope as a strategy.
I think too, one of the ways to combat hope as a strategy in your sales team is to make sure that they have a way to get rid of those things, Jenna, that you were just talking about in the pipeline, where they're not exactly dead. Like they're going to do something sometime, but it's just not now. They're what I like to call latent shopping, right? Like this is a problem to solve in the future. I'm latent shopping right now. But I will solve it someday. There has to be a nurture bucket or process that goes to your SDR team or to something else. So it gets out of the AE's immediate pipeline, but it isn't lost, right? Because the last thing an AE wants to hear is how this thing ended up, in their competitor's lap because they closed it out as lost too early, right? And so they want to hold on to everything. But if they can hold on to it by shifting it to a different area of the business who can keep it warm and alive, right? Whether that's back to marketing or to a BDR pool or whatever your process is, you'll actually find that they'll feel better about the process of getting it out of their pipeline and only work on the now, which is what you need them to do, right? And not just be nurturing 400 things that are going to take 18 to 24 months to close unless that's your sales cycle. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for joining me to this panel. I'm sure that a lot of women who listen to us and you are now their inspiration. And thank you for sharing your stories, your experience. It was great to hear from you. Back to you, Kendra.
Great. Thanks so much, Margaret. That was fun. That was a great conversation. So thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. But so for now, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Jenna. So again, Jenna, VP of Growth at Sales Assembly, and she is the founder of Career Civility. So Jenna is going to talk with us today about something that is just so important. It's, creating urgency. So leveraging value-based urgency to inspire prospects into action. I know just from my own experience, the you get a lead so far down the pipe and then it just kind of sits, so how do we create that urgency, Jenna? So I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. We are going to carry on the momentum from that last question in the panel, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly. Let's see here. Thumbs up that you can see my screen. Emojis, chats.
Yes,
Cool. Great. Thanks, Kendra. All right. Usually I start out every presentation trying to garner some chat warriors with our keyboard. I know that we have some on the
Hey, Jenna,
live.
do you mean to be in presenter mode so that we can see your notes here?
Oh, did I share my wrong screen?
I think so.
Let's see here. Desktop 2. There we go. Let's share that one. Now can you see it?
Yes, we can still
Okay.
see the
Thank you.
notes.
I always have 2 windows up, and
I think you want to hit the present button because right now we can see.
man, you think after 2 years of being on Zoom, I'd be able to figure out how to share my screen. Okay. Let's try this one more time. Pressing the wrong buttons. All right. We'll present first, and then I'll share my screen. Let's see here. Desktop 2. How about now?
There we go.
Nice. Okay. Thank you. Where was I? Chat warriors. Usually I like to get everyone involved within the chat so that way we can be a little bit collaborative on today's session. I know that there are some on the live stream as well. So those who are on the Zoom, feel free to use the chat. Those who are on the live stream, I'll fill you in if there's any chat activity. All right, we are going to talk about creating urgency and leveraging value-based urgency to inspire prospects into action. Kendra had already introduced me, so I will skip that and we will go right into today's end in mind. I always like to keep presentations very tactical, especially knowing that it is November 29th. It's almost the end of the month, so good luck closing out November, but then we also are coming up on the end of the year. So when it comes to bringing in as many dollars as we can or forming a new pipeline heading into the new year, my goal today is to give you 3 tactical strategies that will hopefully help you either close deals this year and bring in the dollars in calendar year 2022, or build more resilient relationships with your clients as you head into 2023. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with a State of the Union. And that's really going to anchor us into what we are all dealing with on a day-to-day basis, especially in this market. I would be remiss if I did not call attention to the fact that 1, our jobs are already hard, and 2, they're just getting harder in the sales world today. So we'll talk about why that may be and what we can do about it. And what we can do about it, I'll provide 3 different tactics. So number 1 is improving your time to value in the sales process. Number 2 is reducing buyer complexity. And number 3 is to communicate cost savings. And I will give you ideas, strategies to be able to accomplish all 3 of these tactics in order to move your deals to a close and create those more resilient relationships with your clients. Okay. My animation, if you would like to head into the chat, or you can just think about it. What's most frustrating to you right now? November 29th, Tuesday, November 29th, 2022. Are you dealing with dark prospects? Are you dealing with elongated sales cycles? Are you dealing with the yes person who has said yes every month for the last 4 months and you're still just pushing the close date? Or maybe it's point of contact changes because unfortunately in the tech landscape, you're being hit, or we are being hit, or the market is being hit with a lot of layoffs and organizations reducing their workforce. So that results in point of contact changes. Not much in the chat right now. Oh, there we go. There's some activity. Yeah, all of this right now. Yep. And dark prospects specifically, probably because everyone's underwater right now, right? A lot is being asked of all of us. Yes, There's a lot being asked of us as sales professionals to bring in as much revenue before the end of the year. But our buyers and our clients are also dealing with a lot, especially if the organization has gone through a reduction in workforce. They are probably bringing on the responsibilities of 1 or 2 or 3 other people. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. But in order for us to, I know that Sam had talked about this at the very beginning of the conference, in order for us to build this resilience and make sure that we're overcoming rejection, let's talk about how we can do this. There we go. I'm a little bit faster than my animations today. So in order to talk about how we can do this, let's also understand where we all are today. So this was actually taken, and this stood out to me after Salesforce Q2 earnings report. So I think this released in August or September, and it stuck with me ever since that. And Brett Taylor, and I don't think that Dimple's on the line anymore, but ode to Salesforce. And what Salesforce had released in their earnings statement was, I think what you're seeing is an increase focused on 3 things in the marketplace today. One is time to value. The other is ensuring that these projects drive cost savings, in addition to customer satisfaction and top line growth. And then the third is reducing complexity and vendor consolidation. What really stood out here is that there's a lot of challenges in this one statement, but there's also a lot of solutions for us in this statement. To me, this is like a roadmap for success, especially as a salesperson, because it gives you an insight into your buyer's mind, or into the decision maker's mind. Excuse me. Clearly I need more coffee. So time to value being one. When we break this out, this means that we need to increase our time to value. We need to reduce buyer complexity, and we need to make sure that we're communicating cost savings. The interesting part is that, 2 months later, this is even more important in the marketplace right now. So we're going to focus on these 3 tactics in order to help you create urgency in your pipeline and ultimately close those deals. Hopefully it will be in December, if not Q1. So that way we can kick off 2023 on a great note. I added this in because I also think it's important for you to take a moment to think about how you're already doing this and what you're already doing well. What's working well? How are you already doing this? Reflect on the things that are going right in your day. I know I'd referenced Sam's presentation earlier, but it is important to recognize all the things that you're doing well and all the positive things that you're bringing to your clients on a day-to-day basis. So how are you communicating cost savings already? How are you trying to simplify the buying process for your buyers? You're probably already doing that in your day-to-day. So how can we pull that out? And how can we acknowledge what's working well in our jobs today? Just a little pulse check for us to think about. Spark some ideas. Keep doing what's working well. I want to hone in on that. Keep doing what's working well. We want to make sure that we're doubling down on that. If your clients are coming back to you, if your clients are responding to you, don't change that. Continue to do what's working for you in your pipeline. From there, if you need extra help, that's what we're going to get into today. So without further ado, we're going to talk about increasing time to value, and I'm going to talk about preparation. When it comes to reducing buyer complexity, we're going to talk about upfront contracts and mutual action plans. And when it comes to cost savings and communicating cost savings, we're going to talk about creating business cases for your buyers. And hopefully we will be able to solve for those ghosting prospects, and then also those legal timelines when it comes to upfront contracts and then reducing buyer complexity. Love the chat action. Thanks. Okay, so preparation. And if you see this come up onto the screen, you are probably thinking, yeah, Jenna, I know how to prepare. That is like, the first step in my job. I know what I'm doing. But I will challenge you to double down on your preparation. When we are able to do thorough research and discovery to uncover the pain point and the impact to the business, we're going to be able to move the buyer through the process a lot more quickly. This relates directly back to the panel that we had just talked about when it comes to prospects already knowing which solutions, softwares, products, services they want to invest in or that they want to explore. What we need to do as a salesperson is be so prepared that when we're asking those discovery questions, we're able to immediately hit on a pain point that maybe they didn't even recognize, or maybe the software that they were evaluating doesn't solve for that pain point. And now they're starting to understand, oh, I should be having conversations with this organization because they're addressing a pain point that we do need to solve. And same thing with the impact to the business. So we need to make sure that we are preparing as much as possible because one, you'll come more prepared to the calls, which I have some data on the next slide to talk to. But two, it also helps you combat the leads who have already done their due diligence. And they've already researched other products and services. So what does it actually mean? Like, what does the data tell us when it comes to being prepared? Top performing reps. This is data that was actually aggregated from Gong. Gong is a conversational intelligence tool that you can embed into your calls. If you aren't using it right now, for those who are, you know how powerful this tool is. And what Gong found is that top performers come prepared with multiple topics in each interaction with a prospect. So that way they are able to, again, speak to those pain points that maybe the buyer didn't even have top of mind coming to the meeting, to the call, to the lunch, to the coffee with you that day. So if you are able to be more prepared, you're able to cover more topics, and that actually results in higher performance on your calls. I was reading this and I was like, yeah, okay. And then I was like, but sometimes you can seem scatterbrained if you come with too many topics. A lot of times if you're asking a lot of questions, then it's hard to tie it back to one solution, and you need to make sure that you are being very organized and making it simple for your buyer. So what was really interesting is then the data continued to double down, and it found that top performers or top reps actually stayed on track more when they had more topics, when they were more prepared, because they knew exactly how to switch from topic A, slide 1, to topic B, slide 2. And they were able to uncover better discovery on those calls. Okay, cool. So we know the importance and the impact of preparation. How can we do this, especially in this market? How can we go outside of our usual preparation tools? Well, let's see. I crowdsourced these ideas from people that I've worked with, from networking groups that I've been a part of, and I would love if you have any additional recommendations, throw them in the chat, message me on LinkedIn, email me, and I can add it to this slide, because this could be your preparation toolbox, if you will. When it comes to preparing or researching, uncovering pain points, a lot of times, the conversation that I hear is, well, I don't know their pain point until I get on the phone with them. While yes, that is valid, you would like to hear it from their mouth. You can also get a temperature check of the pain point that they are dealing with. If you log on to LinkedIn on any day, you can probably temperature check or gauge what each industry's pain point is at any given point in time. So a couple ways that you can research and prepare for pain points as you head into conversations: set up Google alerts for the companies that you are trying to sell into. Try doing competitor research. See if they're public organizations, take a look at their earnings reports and start seeing what they're dealing with, because most likely, even if your company or even if your prospect is a private company, they're probably dealing with similar challenges. And what's also cool is you can then take a look at their marketing content. What are they putting out on their blog or their news center on their website, on their LinkedIn? Usually what they will do is tie their own company's value prop back to current events. And that will also help inform you what they're trying to solve for and how they're trying to get revenue for their business. So that way you could speak to that. So pain point, business impact. How is the market impacting their business? I had mentioned LinkedIn, but Bloomberg, Glassdoor, Morning Brew, Inno, podcasts. These are all subscriptions that you're able to subscribe to. It comes to your inbox every morning. I get a lot of these emails. I do not read them every morning, but usually on a Saturday, or if I'm commuting, or if I'm standing in line waiting to pick up my daughter from daycare, I will go to the emails that I've left unread and just skim them. So that way I can be a little bit more informed about that workday or starting the next workday. Buying process. What other vendors does the client invest in? This is a unique one because this will help inform you how they typically buy other products and other software, especially in software sales. Sometimes it's very nuanced. What you're trying to sell, you're dealing with legal, you're dealing with red lines. So what other vendors do they work with? What other products do they invest in? And can you learn about that sales process and how they typically engage with other partners? Is it relevant for how you would sell to them? Is it different? And then figure out what they're working on internally. So I had mentioned the earnings call, if they're public, but look up other people at the organization and see if they're on podcasts. Set up LinkedIn alerts for different people who work at the organization. I think Dimple is a great example of maybe not necessarily if she's the buyer, but what you could do is you could set up LinkedIn alerts for what she posts about, and you can start to understand what Salesforce is doing or how she's supporting her clients. Don't just focus on your decision maker, also focus on their team and focus on their leaders. So that way you can start to get like a 180 view of the organization and of the team that you're trying to sell into. Okay. Preparation. That is the first tool for us to increase time to value. The less time that we can spend on the phone trying to pick up these little like golden pieces of nuggets that you can then turn into your sell, we're going to increase our time to value because we're not going to be spending as much time trying to dig. So come prepared. Make sure you're doing your research, have questions relevant to what they're working on, and you will be able to increase your time to value. All right, that's number one. Thanks, Salesforce. Number two, we want to reduce buyer complexity, especially time kills deals. We know that, right? Like the longer a deal sits in our pipeline, the less likely it is to close. So we need to make sure that we are reducing buyer complexity by making it really, really easy for our buyers. How are we going to do that? I propose 2 tactics embedded into one: upfront contracts and mutual action plans. Who uses an upfront contract or a mutual action plan already? I actually have that as my next slide, but I'm jumping ahead. These, I think, are a secret weapon to our jobs, especially today when our decision makers and our buyers have a million things going on. They have less people on their team, so they're taking over new initiatives, and it's hard to keep track of everything. Upfront contracts, UFCs, which I will refer to throughout this presentation, or mutual action plans, MAPs, they create urgency based on your client's timeline, not on your timeline, but on your client's timeline. It's also a vehicle that's going, as I mentioned, reduce buyer complexity because it delegates specific tasks, responsibilities, timelines, and accountability to both parties, not just the buyer, but yourself as well. Admittedly, I dropped the ball on an email yesterday that I realized I said, I will follow up with you on Friday. That was back on October 27th. If I had a mutual action plan for that conversation, I wouldn't have dropped the ball, and I would have made sure that I followed up with that client on Friday when I said I would. So again, that helps us combat the time that will eventually kill all deals unless they're closed quickly. Okay. I already asked this. Pulse check. Do you use upfront contract in your sales process? What about mutual action plans? Again, if you're using this and it's working really well for you, keep using it. Everything that I'm talking about today is if you're stuck and you need a little bit more help. So please continue doing what's working well for you. I would love to hear stories, experiences, maybe other tools and tricks that has worked for you in your sales process or in your pipeline that I have not mentioned today, because the more information that we share with each other, the better we're all going to be. I promised tactics, so let's double tap into each of these tactics. When it comes to an upfront contract, this is something that I like to use throughout the sales process. And honestly, I try to use upfront contracts before or as a conduit to change a deal into different stages in the pipeline. So if I'm taking my deal from prospect into discovery, into proposal, into negotiate, what is the upfront contract for each of those stages? It's about getting your client on the same page. So that way they don't have a look into your CRM. They don't know where they are in your pipeline, but you're still on the same page that, hey, our next conversation is going to be a defined proposal call. Your prospect should know that they're heading into a proposal call with you. They shouldn't be surprised by that. And it ensures that each meeting and every email is direct, and then it has tangible action items assigned to each party. So here's what it could look like. I put an example as to if you were on a meeting with someone and you were closing out a meeting, you could say, hey, as we conclude our time together today, if I put an action item on my to-do list to send over a more formal proposal, PDF, bullet points, about what we had talked about today and how our services or our solution could help, would that qualify us to schedule an additional meeting with the other two stakeholders? You had kind of mentioned that we had talked to that you would need to run this by 2 other people at your organization. Would that qualify us to get another call on the books by the end of next week? This will help you. I keep using the word temperature gauge. I don't know. Apparently that's just what's coming to my mind this morning, or temperature check or gauge. This will help you understand how serious the buyer is. And to the last question in the panel, how can you tell a lead that's just going to waste your time versus a lead that's actually going to close? Using upfront contracts at the end of your meetings, in every meeting or in every stage of your pipeline, will help move the deal along. And it will also help qualify the deal so that way you know if your buyer is serious. As always, if anyone has any upfront contracts that works really well for them, if you would like to brainstorm, this is my favorite thing to do, brainstorm conversation starters, brainstorm emails to better qualify your leads or to make sure that you are moving them appropriately along in your pipeline. Email me, reach out to me. We can wordsmith depending on the situation, because I know that every client's different and this wouldn't work for everyone, but I'm more than happy to lend a helping hand. All right. So we covered upfront contracts. That is something that you're able to do in emails on every meeting. Mutual action plans are they are powerful. And a mutual action plan is something that you are able to design, develop, set up, create at the very beginning of your sales process, and you can follow it all the way through, like not even to contract close, but to like implementation. And then once you hand it off to your customer success team, if you have one. But a mutual action plan is a specific document that outlines detailed steps, action items, and timelines. Don't forget the timelines. We got to have due dates here that both the buyer and the seller need to follow in order to close this deal and in order for the deal to be implemented successfully. Pulse check, do you use them? I know, Kendra had said that maps have helped tremendously. This would also help you prepare for those pipeline meetings. If you are having pipeline meetings and your sales manager or your director is grilling you on the ins and the outs of this deal, rightfully so, to make sure that we're qualifying pipeline, having a mutual action plan is going to be your best friend. This is an example from Sales Hacker. There's a couple different pieces of it that I'm going to break out on the next slide, but a mutual action plan not only can be shared internally with your team, if you're working with a solutions consultant, if you're working with a customer success manager, if you're working with your sales manager to get the deal across the line, but it can also be used externally as well. Like I would recommend you sharing this with every single person involved. And here's how to create a mutual action plan. So the first thing you want to do is include a value summary or an objective of the partnership together. Why are you spending all this time together? Why are they taking meetings with you? Why are you doing all this work on the back end to present your product to this customer? Then identify all the stakeholders. So as I just mentioned, a solutions consultant, sales manager, but then your clients as well. Who is responsible for what? What is their role? If legal needs to be involved, then ask them specifically for who will be redlining the agreement. If procurement needs to be involved, who will be the point of contact within procurement? Make sure that every single person is identified on this sheet, and then hand it back to the client and say, is there anyone else that would need to touch this contract or that would need to be involved in this decision? And make sure that their name, title, email address is listed on the mutual action plan. Again, you're doing this right now. You're most likely putting all this information into your CRM, or you're at least writing it down. So just documenting it and having it be a shareable document is going to take away any confusion. It's going to be a very transparent vehicle for success. And I'm sure that your client will appreciate it as well. If they've never used a mutual action plan with a salesperson, they might at first be like, whoa, like, why am I doing this? And then just communicate to them like, hey, if this is something that you are considering as an investment, it's important that we make sure that we are doing our due diligence throughout this entire buying process. And this document is going to ensure that we are doing that. Again, they're spending dollars. You want to make sure that you are being the trusted partner when they're investing. Communicate the deliverables. What needs to be done? When does it need to be done? What does this buying process look like? This is a chance for you to ask your client, hey, how do you typically buy softwares like ours? And then you can also say, hey, if you're buying a software like ours, here's typically what happens. Here's how long implementation takes, et cetera, et cetera. This is very unique to your product and your clients. And it's something that can change. Like a mutual action plan can kind of be a business plan. It is a living, breathing document. Processes change all the time. So if you have a new process, add it in there. It will throw a wrench into your sales process, but if you're following this, at least you've had it documented on your end. Sometimes there are things out of your control. Build out timelines. Always have a date associated with something. If you can't pick a specific day, then say by the week of, or by the end of the week on Friday at 5 p.m. Build out these timelines so we can all be held accountable. Again, things happen. People get sick. Kids have to stay home from daycare, but that at least knows that overdue task should be first priority for yourself or the client. And if your client is also not following the timeline, then you can reference back to, hey, in September, we had set a due date for November, and it is now, we've set a due date for November 5th. It's now November 29th. I'm worried that this is not going to close on time. And you can start to communicate your hesitations or yellow lights, if you will. Okay, then start to delegate. We have dates, we have deliverables, delegate those to each individual. And then make sure that you're focusing on outcomes and ROI. You don't want to be doing any tasks that do not relate back to a contract close or back to your commission. Your client doesn't want to do anything that's outside of their purview. So make sure that you are relating it back to the why of each action item. This is a hefty topic. I just talked very fast. Surprisingly, I've only had like half a cup of coffee today because I dropped my cup of coffee this morning. But if there are any questions or you want to double tap into any of these, feel free to let me know. We work with a great group of individuals, especially on this line. So use your peers as well. Ask people internally at your organization if you're using these. Yeah, if this is me on a half cup, I should slow down. I get excited in public speaking settings. So I probably don't even need to drink coffee before these opportunities. All right. So we have talked about time to value in terms of preparing. We've talked about reducing buyer complexity using two different tactics, such as an upfront contract, a mutual action plan. Now we need to communicate the cost savings. And this is something that I'm sure the veterans on the line have been doing for years. I've noticed that it has been left behind a little bit in terms of now I've seen buyers have to create the business case themselves and then sell it internally, but I'm challenging us to create the business case for our clients and have them edit it. They don't need to create it from scratch. We should be creating it for them. This is very different than a proposal. A proposal walks through what your services and your product can deliver to the client. A business case ties back your value prop to the impact of the business, not only in terms of like outcomes, but also in terms of dollars and ROI. So when you create this business case for them and you deliver it to them, specifically ask your client what's missing, what dollar figures am I leaving out? If they're saving headcount, what job are they saving on? What is the dollar amount that they're able to save by investing in your software as opposed to hiring a full-time employee? And I put anytime you can communicate to a buyer the cost consolidation, the automation, the integration, and or a plan for them to be able to scale related to their business pain or their business plan, and how your solution can solve for that, communicate it directly and communicate it often. Once you go through the proposal and you have that discovery and you are now ready to put together a business case, make sure that you're communicating this business case to every single person that you interact with on every single meeting. Procurement, this is a big one. A lot of times procurement doesn't care what your service does. They're just here to make sure that you are not, or that they are saving their company dollars on this solution. So when you're in the room with legal or procurement, make sure that you are communicating this business case to every individual that you're speaking with throughout the sales process. A cool way to be able to do this, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about how to present a business case. And then I'll also talk about a cool way that I've seen positive response when delivering a business case in a unique way. So in order to present a business case, there's 4 things that I put here that you should keep in mind. Communicate the goal of the investment along with the desired outcomes. The good news, you already have that written out in your mutual action plan. That is in your overview section. So grab that and throw it into the business case. I should say the mutual action plan is going to be a lot more detailed than the business case needs to be to their leaders. So for example, if you're working with a VP or a director, they need to take it to the CFO. The CFO is not going to care about all those dates and who needs to do what. The CFO wants to know the nuts and bolts of this business case. So communicate the goal and the investment along with the desired outcomes. Connect the key business pain points with your product's solution. Be upfront about the cost, and you can compare it to other cost options as well. Include what's included and what's not, and then provide timeline and next steps. So an example here, I work at Sales Assembly. I'm selling Sales Assembly. And what we are trying to do is sell professional learning, development, and education to all revenue teams within B2B tech. We also have advisory. So what I'm doing when I'm presenting a business case is communicating to the buyer so that way they can communicate to their decision maker, the person that's going to sign off on the budget. Hey, you said that you need more qualified sales leads. You need a better ABM motion. Maybe your reps, when they're reps and they become leaders and they just have zero training, and you're losing a lot of people to untrained leaders. Those are the pain points that I've discovered in the discovery process. So then I will say, in order for us to improve your ABM motion, we are going to provide marketing and sales advisory through XYZ. In order for you to better train your frontline sales leaders, this is what we're going to provide. That is going to result in less turnover. It's going to result in more qualified leads, and it's going to result in you hitting your 10 mil AAR goal for 2023. So you want to make sure that you're talking about, here's why you're thinking about investing in Sales Assembly. Here are the 2 to 3 pain points that you had talked to me about. Here's how we're going to solve them. Here's what it will ultimately deliver for you. And oh, by the way, it's going to cost XYZ. If you brought in an outside sales trainer, it would be 6 figures. We'd be able to deliver this for half that. And we could implement it in 2 weeks. That was me telling you the business case. Sometimes I do this via video, and I think that this is a really great way to deliver a business case to a buyer that catches attention. I try to keep it under 4 minutes. I keep it very light, but I basically go through exactly what I had just said. So the North Star goal, improving client satisfaction. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to focus on these 2 areas. The next slide then goes into cost savings and timeline of deliverables. So send this as a presentation, as a PDF, a video presentation, a PDF, and then via email. However, the decision maker has time to read, listen, or digest information, you will be able to cater to all 3 of those opportunities. If they are someone that just wants to listen as they're driving, if they want to read an email, if they like PDFs because they save it and they print it, however they like to digest information, you're covering all 3 bases here. So again, an example of like a video, but then an email. And I always recommend tying it back to the client's why, their pain point, why they're on the conversation with you, why they're asking the CFO for these dollars, why they're asking the CFO for their time. Does anybody currently use videos to like present business cases? I can feel, I have not, but I love the idea. Nice. I was gonna say, I can feel some head nods in the room. Okay. I did just zoom through this, didn't I? To recap, we have a lot of time for questions if people have questions. To recap, preparation will increase your time to value. Don't waste your client's time talking about things that are irrelevant to their business. Sam had mentioned this on the panel. You cannot fake it till you make it. Do not fake questions that you think will be relevant to your buyer. It's wasting their time. It's wasting your time. Make sure that you're prepared upfront to come to the meeting with very pointed and helpful questions for your client. They will appreciate it, and it will be time well spent. Upfront contracts and mutual action plans will reduce the buyer complexity. One thing that I've noticed just in the last month of being in sales, everyone needs to approve a purchase right now. In sales, it used to be like, hey, if you're a revenue generating org, like you could just sign off on something. And I sell to salespeople. That is not the case anymore. They need to run it by marketing. They need to run it by customer success. They're running it by legal, probably a legal team of 1 because I'm in the startup world. But there is no longer a pen and a check available to a VP of sales. So if they're running it by multiple people, you need to make sure that you're reducing that complexity. You're simplifying it as much as possible for every contact across the sale. And then communicate those cost savings. That is going to, again, save you a lot of time. It's going to give you a lot of credibility, especially in this market. You're going to be hearing it a lot more. We need to do more with less. 6 months ago, we were able to invest in these type of services. Now we're not. If you are able to communicate the cost savings that they will be taking advantage of by investing in your service, it's going to perk their ears, and you're still going to have a seat at the table as opposed to being shut down right away. And that's all I have today. Time for questions.
Oh, thanks, Jenna. That was great. I actually have a question myself.
Yeah.
So for going back to the upfront contract,
Yeah.
how is that structured? And because I feel like I have a different vision of what an upfront contract is versus maybe what you're talking about. Is this just getting the contract to them early, or is this pieces of the contract you agree and we can kind of move forward?
Yeah, such a good question. I'm really curious to hear how you use upfront contracts, because how I've been using upfront contracts is really a verbal contract,
Okay.
and then reiterating it via email. So that way it's in writing, but it's not actually a formal contract.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. When I thought upfront contract, immediately I was thinking getting the contract up in front of them early, right? So they know all the details and they can, pull in the people they need. So, but no, I like that the concept of, upfront contract, that verbal and then reiterating it via email. That's super helpful, right? Because it's easier to have that conversation, right? And them to be able to agree to those things and then you can document it, right? Versus sending something and then saying, hey, did you read it? Do you agree? Do you agree? And poking them. So that's great. I love that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I can even add like an upfront contract is a verbal contract, all about getting on the same page with your clients, making that differentiation.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
I'll stop sharing my screen too.
Great. No, this was super helpful. This was great. I love this conversation. It's something that I'm always trying to refine, right? As I kind of said at the beginning, you have those deals that move along and then they kind of fall into that hole, that big black hole, and you're like, what's going on? And then again, time kills all deals. So then you're in that situation. So really, holding people accountable, and creating that urgency is just so important in that stage of the cycle. So thank you so much. That was great. All right.
We have a couple of questions from people who are streaming who've sort of emailed or posted them places. So one of the questions is, how will you introduce the idea of the mutual contract and get buy-in from the other side?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this might be tired, but I think leaning on the state of the market and how buying has changed could be your in there. So you can say, hey, based on my experience or based on the market, what we've seen helpful for both our implementation process and for our clients is to introduce this document that is a mutual action plan. Not sure if you've used one before, and then give them an overview as to what it is. And to be honest, if they don't want to use it, they might not want to use it, but you can always ask that, right? And give context. Hey, based on the market, this has been a very effective vehicle for making sure that we're making your life easier. It's called a mutual action plan. Here's what it is. Is this something that you'd be open to using? Or have you used this in the past and would you like to try it again? That's a very casual, non-alarming way to introduce it.
Excellent. And then the second question is, with the upfront contracts, what commitment are you trying to get out of those at the beginning?
That is a really good one. And this is probably relevant to your sales process and how you move prospects along in the process. So personally, with the sales process that I work off of, I probably wouldn't introduce a mutual action plan until after the proposal. I would, keep those verbal upfront contracts throughout, moving them from lead, prospect, discovery into proposal. Once I'm in the proposal stage, I would then introduce the upfront or the mutual action plan. And this is a way for you to be direct and transparent with your buyer as to, okay, we've already covered BANT, budget, authority, need, timeline. And this is a way for us to make sure that we are delivering on all three of those, or all four of those, or delivering on the timeline. So depending on your sales process, if you follow BANT, or depending on, when you move your prospects through the process, and if demos are included, you can choose when it would best fit your process.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, that was great. Awesome. Is there any other questions out there?
I'm not seeing any right now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again, Jenna. That was great. We really appreciate it and really appreciate you joining in the panel. So thank you so much. Great. Okay. So I just want to take a few minutes here to wrap up. Again, thank you all for joining. It's been a great conversation. It's been great time here today, this morning, and hopefully, you found some benefit. and some new information, right? So it's always great to learn something new. So I wanted to pop this up one more time. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook. You can visit our site. You can email us, connect to us on LinkedIn. It would be great to connect. As I mentioned, we are going to be sharing information from, following our workshop. We will be scheduling regular webinars moving forward. We're releasing our newsletter. So please like our page, and we will reach out for the opportunity to subscribe to those and get updates on the latest information. So with that, again, thank you. Does anybody have any closing questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you all again for your time. Have a great